Vision via radio-show.co.uk with our timing as well with the DNLS and coming up in round about 5 minutes time over on RS3 and also in Sound and Vision on the website. We have Full Metal Real World Racing from Creventic down in Portugal. Johnny Palmer and Nick Damon will be taking you through that one. And we've lost our last winner to the Real World. Phil Ellis is on pole position for HTP Windward. It's a cracking battle between them and the two Herbert Porsches yesterday evening that Nick and I did the qualifying for. And so they'll be leading off that race over on RS3 and also in Sound and Vision. So we've got no Phil Ellis here, which means that Jack Sedgwick has brought Marvin Dienst into the man-filter Team HTP Windward Mercedes here this weekend. They're going for 2 wins in a row. Good to see Phil Ellis driving the Real World car, as he was doing a couple of weeks ago here, with the first victory for the HTP team, and also the first victory this season that we've seen for the AMG GT3, Bruce, as well. And it was slightly controversial, but a mistake by Team Esport Williams that handed them the victory last time out.
Well, Williams have been excellent in this championship, the Williams Esports team, but they simply blundered last time around, and rules are rules, and we've seen various people tripping up, and I don't know how they ended up reaching the stint time, but they did, and it's immutable, but it's really blown their championship chances. In fact, it's dropped Williams Esports, sort of down the order somewhat, but we've got quite a few driver changes this weekend as well, John, so including losing Agustin Canapino, who'll be doing the virtual Le Mans along with a group of others, but he's in the championship-leading Marla car, so a real change for the Marla team this weekend, and interesting, gives other people a bit of a shot at the sharp end of the field, so I'm all for it, really. A bit like old days motor racing, where you never knew who was going to turn up.
Well, and that has been one of the joys, hasn't it? We said about the engagement. The joy for me of this DNLS powered by VCO, the Virtual Competition Organisation, is the regulations, the weighty tome of regulations, state that you must have a real world driver in your squads, and it was 2 real world drivers for the DN24 that we covered earlier on this season. And next weekend, of course, we've got the Digital iRacing Le Mans 24, the biggest esports race in terms of entry of the year. We had 1,265, I checked my notes, 1,265 teams entered for the DN24, and it is already, I'm told, by the organisers, there are already more than that in next weekend's iRacing Le Mans 24 hours. We'll bring you some coverage of that as well. We'll be splitting the work with our colleagues from racebot.tv. More details of that as the week goes on. And I'm really excited for the next few weeks. Great to have Full Metal Real World Racing back, but we've got a lot of championships still to tie up in the virtual world, Bruce, and we've got the shape of the iRacing Le Mans 24, possibly the biggest esports event of the year in terms of public participation. Certainly it is, and it's been going for 6-7 years now, and there is the requirement for real world drivers, and I expect that there to be a very impressive entry in the top split that we'll be covering.
No, I absolutely agree, and I mean I just find it mind-blowing about the number of people. You say 1,265 competitors for the Digital Nürburgring 24 hours. That was split over 55 different runnings of the event, if you will, 55 different levels. But the thing that really strikes me is a lot of the pro regular racing drivers have been slightly caught on the hop. Some might have done a bit of sim racing over the year, but the person who's first one to really land a title, Bruno Spengler, you commentated on that, Watkins Glen action. It wasn't a great result in the race for him, but he has really stuck in that series, being a regular competitive here with us on the Digital NLS. He has learnt, and likewise we keep extolling this, but BMW are treating all sim racing as though it's real world racing. They're keeping all their pit crews really on their toes, keeping them sharp for when Full Metal Racing returns and putting out full pucker interviews with their drivers, their engineers, and they're doing a fantastic job. And I think, you know what, when the real season starts for Full Metal Racing, BMW's PR will be leading the field. But one point I want to make is a lot of regular racing drivers not quite prepared for this world, but why should they be? They didn't expect it when they went towards the end of their closed season. They will have already been laying down their plans of attack to do a full digital season alongside their regular racing in 2021. Right. You can be sure of that, John.
And it's kept all of us, you talked about the PR teams, it's kept all of us sharp. Certainly when I was watching the full real world, full metal is the term you coined brilliantly, Bruce, I must say, full metal real world racing in qualifying trim yesterday. I'm now much more used to identifying cars from a quick flash of something. It's kept my skills honed as well, and in some ways we've been spoiled, particularly when we're with the guys from VCO, and I noticed that we've got Connery back on the pictures this morning. Thank you, Connery. These guys are absolutely top notch in the way they can follow at the moment. Christian Cronjes in the BMW, now switching to BSC Sports. The Gatrofts car, the number 77, still waiting for that car to put a time in. And we've been rather spoiled by the coverage that we get in the virtual world. It was actually a bit of a shock to the system to go back to normal, quote unquote, fixed cameras around circuits, augmented by a plethora of onboards. So it was good fun. Thoroughly enjoyed that yesterday. And Johnny and Nick just on the air now for a 12 o'clock start for that. They'll do the first 3 hours, and then we'll be back at 7 o'clock UK tonight. So time after you've watched our race here with DNLS to go away, have a bit of a Saturday, and then come back and watch some Full Metal Racing later on. If you don't have to make a choice, although they're both live at the same time, of course, we will have the replays on radio-show.co.uk. So watch one, watch them side by side, or watch one on delay, and we promise there'll be no spoilers in this for what's going on in Portugal and vice versa. Okay, that's the way it will work here. We like to keep you all happy. Alexi Eloma for Vodafone Team Get Speed in second position on the timing sheet at the moment. No, on first position. My apologies, it's just updated. It's just gone through by 0.32 of a second from Kenneth Gilbranson for E-Team WRT. In second place, then Valkenhorst BMW, then Team BMW Bank. There's Bruno Spengler. He's done his 2 laps. In fact, he's done 4 laps, so he must have had an off somewhere. BS Competition, another front-running BMW team. They've been at the sharp end in fifth. Manfield, the Team HTP. Marvin Dienst doing the qualifying. Now, Jesse Kron for VRS Coanda Sim Sport gets a little hip check and gets pushed off the circuit right at the end of the lap, and he's hit the wall. Oh, the 108 car was on a decent lap there, possibly improving from current 7th position. And the Audi alongside with a little hip check is, well, was that maybe just a bit of a low percentage lunge from Jesse, but that lap ruined there. Continuing down through the top 10, John Edwards for Rover Racing in the 98 car, Marvin Otterbach for Race Union in 9th, and Lucy Trefts that we were watching earlier in the dark grey BSC sports car. That's your top 10, separated, by the way, by 3.5 seconds only. Extraordinary, the excellence that we have here. So for round 6, the H&R 3 Stunden coming to the end of qualifying now, Bruce, but 1 or 2 laps still to be completed.
Yeah, but I expect we'll see a time about 5 seconds quicker than their first flyer, because we saw 7:51s in practice this morning. But being given a chance to see Jesse Krohn in the BMW BRS Coanda really close to the tail of the Audi, went up alongside as they got into the final sequence, but really not alongside, forced the issue, and then he was on the grass. And as you know, full speed on the grass on one side, huge miss, but then eventually collected the barriers when they were right in front of him. I've been watching them when you were talking, John. Those two have been running really close to each other, tripping themselves up somewhat. Yeah. might have been worse, but when you've only got potentially time for 2 flying laps, you don't want to squander them. And I guess they both were playing a percentage game, but it definitely went against Jesse Crone. Very, very bent BMW. Of course, it can be repaired before the race at the flick of a button, but that lap was what got ruined. So he'll be down at the tail end of the 20-plus cars in the class. Big mistake.
Hello at the time certain clock, who's tuned in as ever. And you can get in touch with us, by the way, at RSL_studio for Bruce and I at the moment. And if you tag us with the hashtag DNLS, then we'll see that. For the Preventing Racing, use RSL_studio and the hashtag 24H series. And then the boys in Studio 1, effectively, will see that. One of the things that is lovely about this situation, Bruce, is that, you know, virtually, I was in Watkins Glen in upstate New York on Thursday, Portimao last night, Nürburgring today, and Portimao later on, which clearly I couldn't possibly have done under the normal regime of covering motor racing. Even I'm not that good.
It's a rich diet, John. The thing that doesn't change, of course, the standard of catering is uniformly better when you're doing it from the studio, close to home. But we do all miss the travel. We don't know when we're going to get going all over again. But right now, this is a fantastic series to follow and to watch. And also, you mentioned earlier about the incredible, infinite number of camera angles. What it does mean is when I covered the NLS later in the year, in fact, it's starting on the 27th June, so the delayed first round very nearly upon us. They will put in camera angles that they may not have had before, but I should know where they are because I've been presented with every single option, as have you. And some of the sort of equivalent of drone shots are just brilliant for showing this circuit. And also for people who've never been to the Nordschleife, what a great way to learn. Fantastic. Yeah. It's a brilliant circuit.
And you really do, particularly on the replays, you really do get the opportunity to analyse what went wrong and where sometimes at the Nürburgring in particular, where the tiniest of mistakes was made. Was there just a little wheel onto the grass that gave up the grip and then speared the car across the track? Was there just a little touch? Or was there just a little lack of concentration? Oh, hang on, we can see from the onboard that somebody was up ahead having a moment. Maybe that took their concentration. Brilliant, absolutely great. And Connery, who's cutting the pictures for us this morning, I saw him in the chat earlier. He's one of the best at that. He found us our leader going off at the N24, Connery Maddock, one of the Racebot TV team. And hello to Will and the rest of the team. They're having another busy weekend, looking after things like the virtual Porsche Super Cup. Racebot guys, the old hands here, we're the new boys in the virtual world. And thank you to all of our colleagues in the virtual world who have welcomed us in uniformly. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope we're doing your side of the sport proud with the respect it deserves. Certainly that's what we're trying to do. Just about over, 1 or 2 laps still to be finished. Bruno Spengler will be no better than 7th. Into the pit for Alexei Aloma for the currently provisional Pole City Vodafone team GetSpeed car. Looks like Kenneth Gulbranson for E-Team WRT with 0.32 of a second. And you know what? I bet Kenneth's going, I know exactly where I lost that. I know exactly where I lost that 0.032. Here's the confirmation of the grids for round 6 of the Digital NLS by VCO. It's the H&R 3 Stunden on the Nordschleife, of course. Vodafone Team GetSpeed will start in pole position for Mercedes. It's Audi in second place for E-Team WRT. Then Valkenhorst and BS Competition for BMW. Mercedes Manfilter Team HTP and Schnitzelam Racing up into 6th position as well. Then Team BMW Bank and VRS Coanda Simsports, both BMW teams in 7th and 8th. Rounding off the top 10, Rover Racing Esports, the 98 car, and Phoenix Racing for Max Hoffer. Marvin Otterbach will start Race Union. Lucy Trefts for BSC Sports. That's your top dozen. Don't forget, live timing available as well on Race Sport TV and also on radio-show.co.uk. Valkenhorst and Black Falcon share the 7th row of the grid. Dirk Muller will not be happy with that. David Pittard he's normally a quick starter, David, so watch out for that Valkenhorst number 35 BMW. Tim Huizingveld, Dominic Baumann, another quick starting driver with Adrenaline Motorsport alongside them on row number 8, and all AMG 8th row of the grid. And by the way, we're still only talking down there in 16th position for David Griesner, 4 and a bit seconds away. Williams Esports, the 109 car in 17th. HR BMW, Team Greenhill, Martin Tomczyk in 18th position. Then the Audi row, that's the 10th row with Ring Vizet Sim Racing and Car Collection Sim Racing, the 33, which I think is the all red car, isn't it, the 33? Haven't seen that one yet today. As far as Cup 2, that's your 911 Porsche Carrera Cup class. Sim RC and Asher Racing, 2 of the big names here. And Martin Asher will be starting alongside, or behind them, should I say. It's German Sim Racing and then Sim Racing Academy, Black Falcon, Project GT1.de. And Violent Racing, powered by ECO Kart Esports Team. We might shorten that down. And going through, DSC EV, powered by AMC Birkenfeld EV. Now, that's super, because that's exactly as we see some of those motor clubs in the NLS proper. SP10, this is the new new GT4 class. It used to be a cup class just for the Porsches, but Porsches have locked out the first couple of rows. Core, Zorg, Zim RC and Black Falcon all within a few seconds of each other, but we have got BMWs in this category as well, but not in the top positions. As you can see, it's all Porsche at the sharp end of that field until we get down to Team Huizingveld, who are running the BMWs, the new BMW M4 GT4, effectively. Actually, that is not what I'm reading from the screen, but I'll go with what we're seeing there. So keep an eye for how that goes on during the race. It is all Audis, because that is the only TCR car in SP3T. Full Send Racing from T3 Motorsport, from Team Huizingveld and Core. Well, the Core guys and Team Huizingveld want to work their way forward, as will Sim RC. The 476, that very distinctive yellow and black car from Zorg Rennsport, Team Nürburgring Esports and DTXE Esports in 8th position, making up the bulk of the TCR field. Leipert with the yellow car, Phoenix, Racetech and WS Racing by Nürburgring Esports, the last 2 rows of that grid. And we will, of course, split those classes up so they all get a start on their own. We're a couple of minutes away from getting things underway. The Porsche safety car already lined up on the Dottinger Hohe. Well, it's warm. The track is very warm indeed. Bruce Jones and me, John Hindhoff. Bruce, what do we reckon here? Are we going to see another tactical mix-up at the front of the field this week?
The simple answer, John, is yes, because these teams don't like to do things differently. Last time their hand was forced, that's a fortnight ago, when they suddenly realised the tyres were not going to be good for 7 laps. They had to start changing their stint length. They changed it on the hop. Let's see what they can do this time around when they've had time to consider. These teams are nothing if not competitive, so I think we're in for a cracking race. But I did notice the Mahler Racing team leading the championship didn't set a time. So let's see if at the back of that group, that could be a real swerve ball if they're coming through from the tail.
All right, good spot. Well, what number car is that, Bruce? The Mahler car?
Look at my notes, it's number 186. It's down as being the 22nd car out of 22, but no time.
Yeah, that's Sami Matti-Trogen and Alex Arana. Sami Matti's been superb this year, as has Alex. Alex often teamed up with Augustin Canapino as well. They've sort of cycled through. That's effectively another Williams Esports entered, or Esport driver lineup, Williams Esport driver lineup, but under the Mahler Racing banner. We're rolling. the GT3 engines cutting through the beautiful early summer's weather here on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, as the bulk of the field, the most numerate class, is the SP9s, GT3. It's up towards Tiergarten. Safety car lights are out. Here we go again for another 3 hours. The H&R 3-hour race, round 6 of the VCO Nürburgring Langstrecke Series. Another triumph of organisation. The Porsche 911 safety car, oh, hits the pit wall! As it went in the pit wall, the safety car driver making a huge error there, as it absolutely clouted the end of the safety car. Remember, we saw a BMW drive into the end of the safety car, into the end of the pit lane wall when the bonnet was up in one of the versions of the real 24 hours that we were covering. But it's the Get Speed bright red AMG GT3 from pole position that leads out from Valkenhorst. Christian Cronjes in the red, white and blue Z4 BMW, then E-Team WRT Kenneth Gulbrandsen pulls on to third position. Then the two Mercedes are Schnitzelam racing in the slightly more greeny yellow, Grello coloured, almost the Manthey Racing Grello, that, isn't it? And the slightly more yellow car behind it is HTP, the Manfilters HTP Winwood car. So as you were from qualifying, as we wait for the Porsche 911 class to come through with Bruce Jones.
Well, pretty tidy start there, bar the safety car, but it's interesting how Mercedes, they took a victory last time out, they rose to the front, and now they're at the front in qualifying. What's happened to the Audi challenge in particular? Anyhow, it's all things Porsches in the Porsche Cup class, and 2x2 through Tiergarten. I have a feeling they won't be quite as tidy through there at the end of this racing lap, and certainly that barrier on the outside has been the one that's caught a lot of them out. But it's so tricky, that sequence of corners where they have to really go through a serpentine course. But right now it's easy. It's just that run down to turn one. Easy for me to say. Can they get it right? They're waiting for the lights to go green. Very good 2x2 formation. But right now it looks as though Sim RC with Claudius Speed 276 is in a tidy position to lead that group down to turn one. Everyone tucking in behind. Good job, gentlemen. And ladies.
That was very good from Martin Asher, because he realised that the pole man was leading the inside road, had to cut across to the right-hand side in the dark of the 911s. And he goes down the inside, he takes the lead as the pole man's gone wide. Oh, what a disaster for Claudius Speed. Also, by the way, running the Asher Racing logo on the door of that yellow, mostly yellow Porsche, and now he's having to defend from from the third place car. Sorry, I'm looking at two different screens at the same time there. That was Keanu Bushman, who was up alongside for a moment, but a great opportunist manoeuvre by Martin Asher from the outside of the front row, the less favoured, but he got across to the right-hand side of the track, Bruce, and in that tricky downhill braking area for turn one, slight mistake by the pole man, and Martin Asher was through. Here comes the SP10, the combined GT4 category. Bruce Jones.
Well, just interesting to see the BMW M4s alongside the Porsche 718 Caymans. This is the first time they're hot off the press, if you will. But a few teams have moved across to try them, but it's Caymans at the front. They, of course, have the experience. Now, this one looks a little bit feistier than the Porsche Cup class. And is there going to be a BMW challenging? At the moment, they're down in the middle of the pack. Actually, as they get down, the pole man has a nice clear advantage. Unlike the 276 class car of Claudius Speed in the Porsche Cup class, he had enough of a lead to take the outside line and swing across. Martin Asher made sure that didn't happen, but he was late on the brakes in the Porsche Cup class, and his sort of semi-teammate let him down the inside. No clash required, and no clashes at all as the Caymans take on the BMW M4s. Very tidy indeed. Good for the pole man.
And it's the core sim racing colours, the white and tangerine. Carl Janssen from Christian Bug, from Tom Valentini for Sim RT, then Oliver Bayer for Black Falcon, Niels Karsten, and then the first of the BMWs, Lucas Müller for Ad Hoc Gaming with the number 369 car. And finally, some of the best racing we've seen has been from the TCRs, the SP3T categories. It's Steen Ledger who is coming through to bring them through to the green. Full Send Racing, the 485 car. He's got T3 Motorsport by BKP, Oliver Ackerman, alongside him, Michael Schuttler and Kimmo Suunanen behind them, and they spread out 4 wide. So all of those drivers I mentioned for a moment, we could see them all, the front of their Audis as they go down at the first corner. Oh, there's a tap on the pole sitter, but he gets it back, got the front wheels pointing in the right direction. I do think, actually, the third place car, Oliver Ackerman in the T3 Motorsport car, I think he lifted out of that so as not to make that any worse. That was very fair driving, perhaps just a little mistake by Oliver, which pitched the lead, the pole sitter sideways, but restitution, if you will, immediately. And Oliver's actually, who had a decent start, and he's dropped back into the pack just a little bit, side by side for the leading TCR as they go into the hairpin for the first time. And it's Schottler who's gone through for Team Heusingfeld, then Ledger, Steen Ledger in second place, Ackerman down to third, then Felix Luding. I said he would move forward, Yannick Danish as well. And already,
you know, when you look at the shape of car, John, you expect them to be a little robust with each other, but we've been so impressed. They run close, but they don't think they're touring cars. They think they're full-on racing cars, and they drive accordingly. And I've been really, really impressed. But I must say, at the moment, out the front of the field, it's a rare thing to have someone pulling away at the front of the field. And certainly the Gatsby Performance Mercedes, looking great in that Vodafone livery, has opened up the sort of gap we're not accustomed to at any point of an opening lap of the DNLS so far. He's got about a 2-second advantage, and looking very, very, very aggressive indeed, but just about staying within the confines of the circuit. Great job from our pole starter, Alexei Aloma.
And he's done exactly the right thing. He's got away from any issues behind the very familiar colours of the Vodafone team, Getspeed, AMG. We've seen them running Porsches in the past as well. And a technical partner, of course, of the Nürburgring Series, Gigaspeed, with their live stream and powering the onboard cameras in the real world with their 4 and 5G technology. That car leading out nicely. Marvin Dienst driving for Manfield, the Team HTP Winwood here. Down in Portugal, Phil Ellis will be taking the start, in fact may have just taken the start of the real world Portugal 24 hours, the Hankook 24-hour series. Damon and Johnny looking after that first 3 hours for us, and we'll be dropping in to that throughout their 24 hours. So once you finish watching here, you're going to catch up with that on the replay radio-show.co.uk, and then join us for some live racing tonight from 7 UK.
Time for some housekeeping, John. We've got 2 of the GT3 runners in the pits at the moment. Jesse Krohn, who we saw thump the VRS Coanda BMW into the barriers on the exit of Tiergarten. He's in the pits, having a lengthy pit stop for repairs. And Dominic Baumann in the Team Heusingfeld car as well. That's the Mercedes number 101, also having repairs. So I was wrong when I said to Shantin Pratt in qualifying, you press the button and your car is okay to race. Clearly not the case. They're having repairs. Meanwhile, Alexei Aloma is pulling clear, about a second and a bit clear now. Kenneth Gilbranson in that Audi from Team WRT doing his best to keep up. And now we've got a bit of a challenge between Schnitzelarm and Marvin Dienst. Trying to push past, but not managing it. Still, the man filter car tucked in behind.
Well, those AMG GT3s make a big hole in the air. And by the way, Sami Matti-Trogen did start at the back of the GT3 field, and he's already worked his way past Benjamin Leuchner and David Griesner for Eibach and Adrenaline Motorsport. So he's up to 19th position and on the tail of BS competition and the American Robbie Foley. Robbie with a great result again on Thursday in the final of the IMSA Pro Series iRacing event, where he drives, of course, for Turner Motorsport, and he's been doing a lot of work with that BMW M4 GT4, doing some of the testing. And he's the battle for 4th position. Schnitzelarm, our favourite schnitzel restaurant chain. I can't wait to get back to Germany to go and track one of those down now. I've seen the menu online, appropriately enough. I've seen the menu virtually. Now I want to go and see it in real life. You can't.
John, I can't wait that long. I asked them to post me one.
What, a menu or a schnitzel?
A schnitzel, man, a schnitzel.
Oh, if only they did mail order. That's fantastic.
They're normally nice and slim, come through the letterbox.
I like it, yes. Martin Asher took the lead of the Porsche Cup class, don't talk about food, Bruce. I'll get very hungry very quickly on
No,
this.
it was a beginner's mistake in the second lap of the race.
Yes, I know. Poor tactics there, Bruce. Martin Asher took the lead of the Porsche race at the first corner. Claudius Veed from pole position in second now. Both of those cars running the AR on the doors for Asher Racing. Third position, sitting in behind them at the moment, is Keanu Buschmann for German Sim Racing in the 234. And look at the drag, look at the slipstream. 276 gets to the inside through underneath the famous Bilstein Bridge and takes the lead back. And that was all down to the toe. Exactly similar cars, very similar drivers. And Keanu Buschmann now will try to get to the right-hand side early. Asher's looking confident. He doesn't want the block in that 227, the dark coloured car with the red flashes on it. So he didn't feel too badly pressured there. Let's drop back into the GT4 category where Oliver Bayer and Lucas Müller are battling for 4th and 5th position. That's Black Falcon and Ad Hoc Gaming by my days.
Tell you what, John, if you think it's close in the Porsche Cup class, wait till you see the TCRs. No surprise there, but a second covers the top 6. Have we said that before? I think we have.
Yes, absolutely. They're almost driving in each other's luggage compartments in that at the moment. So here comes the third group of cars, and this is now, remember, this used to be Cup 2. We've now got Porsche 911 Cup class. This used to be Cup 3 for the Caymans. We've got a 911 Cup class still, but this is now the SP3T, the SP10 category for what is effectively international GT4 Formula cars. BMW's fanning out in the background. There's the first of the new M4s, sitting in there with that distinctive green, black and white livery, and that is the 5th place car. That's Lucas Müller for Ad Hoc Gaming. So we've seen those colours before, but Bruce, what we haven't seen is this newly modelled and newly released M4 GT4 as part of the last iRacing update.
Well, it looks fantastic, and it's a great opportunity. I want to see a real close-up shot. I will. It's going down towards turn 1. So 5th place in class behind Oliver Bayer, but certainly right in the hunt. And in fact, going down into turn 1, looking very feisty indeed. But to me, at the moment, the question is, can anybody do anything about the race leader, Alexei Aloma? 2.3 seconds clear from Gulbrandson's Audi, so it's Mercedes leading the way. But again, you look at the angles that we're treated to as he's halfway around the lap, dropping down towards Kallenhard, Versailles, and all those great corners, and he's on it. Mercedes sounding, it's still one of the best sounds in motor racing, that Mercedes engine note. And faithfully replicated and just magnificent.
When you trackside with those cars, and this has been Mercedes in all types of motor racing that I can remember. Now, in fairness, ITC, the All German Touring Car Championship, I didn't get to see those in real life, although I'm sure you did. But certainly the Le Mans cars in the late 80s, these GT cars, there's something about the engine notes of a Benz engine, whether it's V8 or V12, but certainly the V8, it rattles your sternum. It is such a low rumble, Bruce, that you feel it as much as hear it.
I think that's a really good description, John. I mean, most motor racing engines are pretty visceral, and that's the thing I do miss about not being trackside. However good, however well it's picked up, there's something about being there. But I tell you what, for years, about 20 plus years ago in Formula One, the best engine note of the weekend was the Mercedes safety car that led the field around. And you'd have people who were sort of new to the paddock, and they'd turn around when it was doing its sort of testing practice runs early in the morning and go, what's on the track? You go, oh, it's just a safety car, but sounding that good, they would say. Yeah, just a brilliant sound.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. So we are into the race and settling down. We've compared this in the past to the first rounds of a heavyweight boxing matches. A few jabs going out, still a bit of dancing around going on to find out the relative strengths and weaknesses of those around you. With still 2 3/4 hours to go, barely 15 minutes, and we're still only on lap 2, of course. Recalibrate your mind if you've been watching short track sprint racing, whether in the real world or virtually, because this is the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This is the granddaddy of them all. The circuit that Sir Jackie Stewart named the Green Hell, and that stuck. Grüne Hölle, and it really is something totally different. And for those perhaps watching for the first time, this is an accurate, millimetre perfect representation of the circuit. Got a few laps around here myself in high performance cars, and indeed even in some race cars. Never raced here yet. That's still on the bucket list. Got to go and do my permit at some stage. This is the battle for, well, I was going to say for 5th and 6th, but
it's 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th.
Exactly, it's 3rd.
In 7th, trying to catch up with them. But I must say, Christian Cronjes in the BMW is just starting to edge clear. He's got Kenneth Gulbrandson's Audi up in front, trying to go off after that. It's been a good half of a lap for Cronjes. He's starting to shake off Marcel Marcevic, the 2 yellow Mercedes. Marcevic from Marvin Dietz pushing very hard, but the BMW just eking its way clear. But all along, what's happening at the front? Alexia Loma in the Get Speed Vodafone Mercedes is pulling ever clearer, further clear. About 3 seconds. In fact, as I say that, the gap's now coming down. He just lost 0.8 of a second to Gulbrandson's Audi, so maybe he made a slight push too hard and made a little bit of a slip up. Still 2 seconds to the good, but interesting. I thought he was getting further away.
Now we've seen, haven't we, just how much the draft is playing a part on the long Dottinger Höhe. Is always a part of racing here, and the driver's telling us in the previous rounds of the DNLS powered by VCO that from around about 2 seconds back you're feeling it. It's a question though of where your gearing is and whether you can actually make use of it. Certainly with the TCRs, Bruce, we've seen you can catch, but once you get right up behind someone, you quite often those Audis are on the soft rev limiter and you can't actually pull out. The moment you pull out, you lose that momentum. It's a massive timing thing, but it can often lead to an opportunity to close up and then make a pass bizarrely down into the first corner on the Grand Prix circuit.
It's that moment when you pull out and you hit the invisible wall. You just then you get it absolutely put in front of you that was how good the toe was. But you know what? Do you take the risk? Do you sit there? You've got to choose that moment. As I said just at the start of the race, that sequence through the Bremskurve and the Tiergarten, it's so difficult. Get it marginally wrong, and there's a sort of massive multiplication of factors that can lead to you just piling into the barriers at effectively the final corner of the lap, and that you do not want to do. Just notice a bit of damage on the side of the Schnitzelam Mercedes. Marcel Marcevic, he and Marvin Dietz have been getting very, very close together, and I don't know if that happened in that final sequence of corners, but what we have seen, John, of course, many times is the fact that some of the damage we cannot see, but the drivers can certainly feel it as they go through the course of this race. Big damage could be repaired in the pits, but that costs time.
There might be a little bit of damage on the left rear of the Christian Cronjes Valkenhorst, just on the left rear wheel arch extension as well. So maybe there has been a bit of side-to-side action there as they head out onto the Hatzenbach, the start of the mighty Nordschleife. If you ever around the Eifel region, I think it's about €35 now for a lap. I remember in the days when you would have got 3 laps for 30, back in my day, when you would have got 3 laps for €35. But it is if you're a motorsport fan, and there's, check the website, because tourist laps, tourist fahren are available throughout the year. Sometimes you have to queue. You go in, you get your ring card, they charge it up with 1, 2, 3, however many laps you want to pay for. And they stay on there, by the way, so if you can't do them all in one go, and I would never suggest with a road car, you try and do them straight consecutively, do a lap, get back in, let you cool down, let the car cool down, then if you're feeling brave, go and do it again. Change for position there in TCR, going up the hill, and we've seen this happen before, going up to the bottom of the Caracciola carousel, that TCR battle now. And I think there was just a little, I think that was Julius Fritz who was going by the Leopard, the yellow car of Marian Hensel, down towards the bottom part of the top 10. But that is the lead battle, and Felix Luding, thank you Felix, because he has fulfilled my prophecy. I said he doesn't like being sitting in the queue, and the Sim RC TCR, the yellow and black car, number 476, is at the head of that. Well, effectively, it's 40 wheels that are absolutely line astern. The biggest gap in there is a 2.9 second gap between 8th and 9th position, or 7th and 8th position, excuse me. But that is the biggest gap. So we've got more than half of that field sitting in each other's wheel tracks, just waiting for a little error. Now, into SP10 GT4, that looked like BMW going past Porsche. Yes, it was. Or was it BMW past BMW? Yes, it was. It's a PS Hype car in that almost camouflage colours, with Team Heusingfeld in 7th position now. Lennart Hartenberg going through the new BMW M4, accurately modelled by iRacing. Good to see those cars.
It's worth pointing out, John, I don't think we have, but just mentioning Marius Zug in that BMW, he's got a new teammate this weekend as they trot out from the BMW M4. He's got Timo Glock, former Grand Prix driver.
Oh, wow.
GP2 champion. And saw some photos of Timo sitting there learning the rig, and I'm sure, with a driver of his calibre, he'll adapt very quickly indeed. But what all the pro drivers find when they come across the sim races is, they're rather than we thought they might be. In fact, they are the gold standard. It's up to the pro drivers to try and chip away and see what they can do about matching them. The car with the camouflage you were mentioning, Marius Zug at the wheel at the moment, that's car number 307. Third in the BMW of the BMWs in that class, but starting to make a bit of progress there. So good splash, and we'll see what Timo can do when he gets a turn later in this 3-hour race.
Yeah, it's still the Porsches who are holding sway as the lappery is beginning to begin. Schnitzelam Racing, by the way, Marcel Markovic has got the best overall lap time in Porsche. It's Claudius Veed who's leading for Sim RC Cup, who's got the best lap time. Core Sim Racing, Carl Janssen leading the SP10 GT4 is the best time there. And as far as the Audis, what's the best time for the Audis? Highlighted in that. And we've been watching the progress of Sami Matti Trogan in Marla Racing Team, now up to 16th position and just half a second behind Martin Tomczyk in the HR BMW Team Green Hell car, who's 0.3 of a second behind Robbie Foley for 14th. So there's a canny little battle going on there as well. Second and third aren't too far apart. The screaming Audi V10 of Kenneth Gulbrandsen looking forward to Valkenhorst and looking behind to the rumbling Schnitzelau Marcel Markovic AMG GT3 in that line. Again, Bruce, we've got to stress here, it's not as if these guys aren't trying, but these cars are so evenly matched, just as in the GT3 real world racing.
Exactly so, but Christian Cronjes, in the early stages of the race, Alexei Aloma, 2 and a bit, 3 seconds clear in the Get Speed Mercedes, then Kenneth Gulbrandsen, the Norwegian racer, in his Audi, but he seemed fairly much in control, and then it was that battle, 3rd place back to 6th, eventually back to 7th, back to Max Hofer in the Phoenix Audi. But Christian Cronjes has not only caught Gulbrandsen, he's passed him, and now he's the best part of a second clear, and Gulbrandsen, instead of being in second, is now having to hang on to that 3rd place, because Marcel Markovic, who's shown fantastic form, you said he set the fastest lap of the race so far, he's getting closer and closer. He's a quarter of a second or so off the tail of the WRT Audi. So Gulbrandsen, slightly not from bad to worse, but from good to less good, I think we could say.
Hello to Mark Persson, who says, I can't believe you mentioned Schnitzel and we're barely 10 minutes in. I know, it was a terrible tactical error on my behalf. The sausage bacon and egg breakfast seems a long time ago already, and we've still got over 2.5 hours to go in what was effectively, in Nürburgring terms, a little bit of a sprint race for the DNLS. Welcome if you are just joining us, whether you're new to this. Leader going past the tourist lap entrance on his right hand side. Alexei Aloma has not been headed. Great pole position lap. Remember, barely enough time to get 2 laps in, and you really can't afford to have a discounted lap for track limits It's super pressurised situation in qualifying, and the qualifying driver has to start the race as well. So Alexei has started the race for Get Speed. The Team Vodafone Get Speed AMG leads it then from Christian Cronjes, who's broken away just a little bit, enough to not have to worry about defending. You can't say that for third position as the Audi goes down the inside. That's the E-Team WRT1 and the man filter. Martin Deist goes through. Deist just gone through.
Yep, Gulbranson has gone from second to third to fifth. So the Audi driver not having a good time there. Race leader, Iloma, he's 2.5 seconds clear. But what we have now, Christian Cronjes in the better place of the Walk and Horse Motorsport cars, he's got nobody on his tail. He's 1.25 seconds clear. You might think that's close. It's not in this terms of racing. He's made his break and now he's heading off after Iloma. See if he can get that BMW up ahead of the Mercedes to lead the race. So, first part of the race, it's really been all about two drivers, Iloma, Cronjes, and let's just take another look on Sami Matti-Trogan. Another place gained. He's up to 15th. Don't forget, he's been a race winner in this. He's been a pole starter. So he's certainly making that Audi really dance under his feet.
Martin Tomczyk sitting in the 112 car in 16th position. Tomczyk about 2 seconds behind Sami Matti-Trogan, who's gone through and cleared off. So Trogan has caught and passed Tomczyk, and now has Robbie Foley in his sights. That's for 14th position. Marla Racing Team, as Bruce mentioned, he's been watching and taking note of the championship standings. This is a championship and it runs through to October. Love the detail on the inside of that BMW, including the M Sport stitching on the centre of the steering wheel. Absolutely brilliant. Even the relays, the AP brake bias. If you look on the steering wheel, next time we get a shot of, in fact, that's even got IMSA overalls on. Is that Robbie behind the wheel there? I think that's Robbie's helmet.
Yeah, it is Robbie, because we're looking at that little battle. It could also be Bruno Spengler, of course, but he's closer to the front of the field. He's running in 6th in his BMW.
Yeah, I saw the IMSA overalls that Robbie Foley's wearing there with the BP Racing Fuels logo on. That is how well even the interior is modelled. The steering wheel, by the way, when you look at the steering wheel on any of these cars, you'll see there's an awful lot of information on there. We can see the gears, we can see the revs, like for Martin Otterbach in the Audi at the moment. Everything else shows, for the most part, other than the delta times, shows up as zeros. The driver is actually seeing those. Some of those will be brake bias. It'll be, you can select what you see on the screen, of course. And the reason they're all zeroed out is so that none of your competitors can gain an advantage by, quote unquote, looking over your shoulder, because quite a few of the teams will have assistance, outside assistance from either their other driver or indeed from a team engineer stroke manager. The other thing is, and we have had people asking us this on at RSL_studio, there is no choice of the view. The view is on board, and the wider the screen, or the more screens you have, some drivers have a big curved screen, some of them have 2 screens at an angle on the outside to give you a more immersive feel. But if you were watching Otterbach there, you could see quite clearly the left-hand rear view mirror showing what's behind. Some of the cars in GTE and GT Le Mans have a rearward-facing camera which comes up on the screen, and you can see that as well as the driver. But if you're wondering why we're not seeing all the information on the screens, that's because that is effectively blanked out so that other teams can't be sneaky and see how you're doing.
As if they would, John.
Yeah.
But one thing that's really been raised, a lot of the top pro drivers who come across cannot praise enough the sim racers with whom they've been partnered, who don't just do their stint and get out of the car, hand it over and say no more. They're there telling them when to push, how to use the tyres, all these things that a real world racing driver will know. But again, things in this race, they don't get the physical input that they would have in a real racing car. So they're trying to feel their way, where feel is such a limited element. They've got all the visual clues and cues, but again, they really lean very heavily on their sim racing partners, and it's been a learning process going both ways. But certainly rest assured, the sim racers have to talk a lot as well when the real world racers are in there doing their stints. It's been absolutely intriguing so far through 2020.
Oh, great. And don't forget as well, 2 driver changes, maximum of 2 hours in a stint for any of the drivers. The TCR train of cars hammering over the far side of the circuit and coming into the top of the hill at Lansgarden, I think, as they're coming down. Yes, it is, as they head down the hill now towards the bridge and then peeling off through the left-hander and into the Kleiner Carousel before heading towards the Gallows Hill corner, which leads onto the long Dottinger. Always bizarre to me if I'm moving around the Nürburgring when we're there for racing and you're driving down the public road, which runs to driver's left on the right alongside, parallel to the Dottinger. If you're going back to the circuit and driving along, you're on that side of the road, of course, and you think you're sort of pottering along if there's no traffic, and then all of a sudden something in your peripheral vision screams by at 276 kilometers an hour or whatever it is. Can be a little distracting. So
it certainly can. And also, John, the roads around the Nordschleife, you get close to the circuit, then you're not close, and sometimes you're surprised. You suddenly realise you're at a point where it's almost kissing the edge.
Correct.
Suddenly racing action through the trees. Racing action is certainly happening on the circuit, though. It's getting very, very busy indeed. In which class? The TCR class. Ha! That's never happened before. But again, when you look at the gold standard, when you look at Team Sim TCR, they're always at the sharp end. But right now we've got, in fact, it's a BMW from the middle, number 3 class, working its way past the TCR leaders. Of course, it's got more. The TCR leaders separated by, well, next to nothing, but it's still Felix Luding only just from the Team Heusingfeld car of Michael Schuttler. Schuttler took an early lead in the race, but up from 5th on the grid. Well, that pairing, Felix Luding and Jürgen Frank, they've yet to disappoint us, John.
I did notice that those TCR cars through the latter part of the lap, the twisty bits, are as quick, if not quicker, than the GT4 car. And indeed, in the start of the Grand Prix circuit, they're side by side going for the lead as they're almost going one either side of the new M4. And that's exactly as in real life in the Michelin Pilot Challenge in IMSA, which we cover, of course. We've seen, even with the slightly restricted power that the TCRs have in IMSA competition, that at tight twisty tracks like Lime Rock Park up in Connecticut, the first and second sectors of that track before you get onto the long front straight, TCRs are quicker than even the front of the field of the GT4 categories, or GS as it's called over there. They are inherently downforce inherently have downforce available to the TCRs. They don't look like they've got big wings, but the whole bodywork provides downforce, and so they are very quick to the twisters.
And they'll trounce the GT4 car, and that's why poor old Nick Wustenhagen is really struggling. He's got the front of the TCR class with him. He's suddenly going to be behind 5 of them, I'd reckon, before they get much past Hatzenbach.
It's getting quick at the front of the field. Alexei Aloma just set a quick time on his last lap at 8:02.5, then an 8:02.002 for Christian Cronjes in the 34 car. So that is now the new fastest lap of the race, 8:02.002 in race conditions and with traffic as well, we should say, for the guys at the front of the field. So that's first and second, and the gap between those two now down to 2 seconds on the nose between Alexei Aloma and Christian Cronjes for Vodafone Team Get Speed in the AMG and the Valkenhorst Motorsport number 34 BMW.
The interesting thing to me there, John, not just the pace of Christian Cronjes' fastest lap so far, but he's now getting on for 3 seconds clear of Marcel Marchevitz. Kenneth Gulbranson back and forth just a second out, but it's the fact that Cronjes got to the front of that group, went up into second place. Now he's catching the leader, but I'm just surprised those behind cannot try and keep in his slipstream. They've just been the toe has been broken, and that's, as you said, if you don't have a toe when you're going up out of Dottinger Höhe, you're not going to catch the car in front. And I think at the moment, bar mistakes, Christian Cronjes in the Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW has broken the toe. That's really, really important for their race hopes.
I'm just looking at the pace at the front of the field, and everybody is setting cracking times, and I wonder what that's doing to tyre life. It is very, very warm at the Nürburgring today, with the air temperature into the mid-20s, a little bit of scattered high cloud, no real overcast here today. And the track temperature was well up into the 40s, wasn't it, at the start of the race?
Yeah, it was 41 at the start,
yeah.
23, and it's carrying on rising, as you say, bright blue skies, scarcely a cloud, which is something you can often say in the Eiffel Forest. It's often there, doesn't always hit the circuit, but you stand up high on the start-finish line, looking out over the Eiffel Forest and see bits of track, but what you mainly see is great big grey clouds approaching. They may swerve past and they may not, so not quite to the same extent as Spa-Francorchamps, where the weather can come in. You know, don't look for 5 minutes, it can come and bite you on the backside. But here, a little bit more warning, but certainly you can stand and think, is that going to hit? Are we going to have to get those tyre blankets on the wet tyres? Because we don't have wet tyres in sim racing, so that's not a fact they have to consider. But we do have to consider the temperature, and it's going to be very, very interesting. But I think we'll go for those 6 lap runs, John.
Yeah, at the moment, and what I should say is we haven't got enough data quite yet to have a prediction of the number of laps, but you can sort of say from our experience, Bruce, we've seen 22, 23, 24 lap races here, depending on the pace at the front of the field and depending on that tyre life. We have seen people squeak 9 laps out of a tank of fuel in the GT3s. There has been a little bit of balancing of fuel capacity in some of the other classes, which have cut some of their stint lengths down a wee bit. But at the front of the field, certainly last time out, when temperatures were getting on for what we've got now, there were very few people who even went to 7 laps, but that was much more tyre limited rather than fuel capacity limited.
Yeah, right now this is, with these temperatures, it's tyre limited. That is their absolute concern in this. And the person who's not concerned appears to be Christian Walkenhorst. Christian Cronjes, real life Spa 24-hour winner. Walkenhorst, he's now 1.5 seconds down on the race leader. Is he pushing those tyres too hard? Certainly, they might have already thought, you've got 6 laps, I'm not going to let you do any more. So if you have the equivalent of 6.5 laps of tyre life and you're going to stop after 6, you can push as hard as you want. But if it's the equivalent of 6.1 laps of tyre life will really fall off, then you'll still be pitting after 6, but you just got to back off. And also, just one thing John hadn't mentioned is the fact that there's been a driver change, or a sort of partnership change at Walkenhorst, because normally Christian Cronjes shares with Mikkel Jensen and Jody Fannin. This time he's sharing with Sam and Scott Michaels, who are normally paired with David Pittard, and David's got a new teammate in British GT4 racer Ben Tuck. So things have been swerved around, but Christian, best finish so far, 3rd place last time out. Running second and catchy.
Wonderful stuff in the Eiffel Mountains with the Walkenhorst BMW staring at the back of another Z4, heading up to the blue and white machine, and that is a battle for position. It's coming up to the bottom of the hill before climbing to the Graciola carousel. I love how you drop into concrete. It's very, very rough indeed. So the Audi staring at the back of that Walkenhorst BMW, and then behind them is the Race Union Marvin Otterbach Race Union SP 1987 car. That's one of the AMGs, isn't it? The bright orange car. And across the line, very close indeed, down towards the first corner. That is Leonard Hartenberg defending from Robert Hager, who gets the blue car ahead in the SP10 GT4 category. So that was Porsche Cayman 718 Club Sport going past the new BMW. Team Heusingfeld, Leonard Hartenberg, he's going to, I think, go wide again here. Yes, he is, in the exit of the AMG Arena section of the Grand Prix track. Of course, we only use a tiny portion of the Grand Prix circuit in these DNLS races. It's only at the Nürburgring 24 that we go all the way down the bottom of the hill to the hairpin. So it's the first cutout, rejoin halfway up the hill, and then through the S's. Now, pit stops. Now, this is interesting. This is John Edwards.
Car. Okay, so how many laps on the board? 4 laps on the board. Remember last time we went 6.664. Maybe they're trying to do 4.666 this time around in terms of their stint length. So Rover Racing, they weren't at the sharp end. They've rolled the dice early on. Obviously, they're dropping down the order as they sit there. But for John Edwards, let's see how good that is. We've got, it looks like Sami Matti Troger. No, it's Esteban Muth has taken over the Williams eSports car. Well, no, he started that, and then had to Dominic Steib. May not have driver changes at this point.
And the Audi has been given up by Benny Leuchter and René Rast into the Audi. You may well recognise that name.
Guy used to win all the championships in Germany with that name, wasn't there?
Yes, just great. Williams supporters group tweeting us here at RSL_Judy says the cars in sim racing have brilliant colour schemes. The Get Speed car is one of them. Well, that's real life. That's their real life colour scheme. Absolutely transfers brilliantly. Had a long chat with Andy Blackmore, renowned graphic artist and livery specialist, going way back through the years to, real world racing designs for McLaren, among others. And he's learned a whole new set of skills. He had 8 liveries in the final of the Pro Sports, the iRacing IMSA Pro Sport Series on Thursday. And he's got some racing this weekend as well in the real world at Portugal and in virtual racing too. So pit stops starting. Dienst's come in for the Manfilter Team HTP car. Markovic in for Schnitzelam. Max Hoffer in for Phoenix Racing. So, Bruce, I think you might have called it here. I think they're doing their short stint right now and getting it out of the way. And what they'll be doing, that'll count, of course, as one of their driver changes as well. Robbie Foley and Sami Matti Trogen are shown as having a pit stop as well at the end of the first lap. Now, I'm not sure if that's true or whether they started from the pits, because for sure Sami Matti in Marla Racing, Audi didn't put a time in, but they didn't change driver.
No, exactly so. Sami Matti now listed in 10th place, but of course with cars like the Rover Racing BMW coming in for John Edwards, that's not entirely realistic. They will be shuffled back. But right now, what I'm just aware of the fact is Alexia Lomi and Christian Cronje are a second apart, just under a second apart now. Traffic is starting to come into play. We saw them hit the tail end, not hit, catch, past the tail end of the TCR class field, John. Now they're in clear air, but for how much longer? Because I think there's another gang of the TCR cars not far ahead of them. I saw them in the background of the shot when they were on the Grand Prix loop. They were heading out to Hatzeback before these GT3 race leaders. And there were about 6 of them, nose to tail. So that's not going to be good news for, well, probably worse news for Christian Cronje. Yes, there is the gang of the TCR cars.
It's Bruce Jones, I'm John Heinzhoff. Leader then, the bright red Get Speed car. And as Bruce has mentioned, the traffic is now going to be a bit of an issue. They will be getting their virtual spotter telling them that there's cars coming up behind. That is one of the joys. And the BMW, that in fact was one of the GT4, the SP10 cars at the top of the foxhole. But no doubt, Alexei was slowed down in the Vodafone Team Get Speed. Vodafone tweeting, Team Get Speed tweeting to us that the pressure was mounting. They haven't given away any of their tactics just at the moment, as you might expect. So, up at the Forest section now. This great flowing circuit which carves its way through the Eifel Mountains. Probably about as far away from the pits as they're going to get. This is the section that's taking them right out into the country, down through Callenhard, downhill section now. It's all about balancing the cars. I like a short shift here on this part of the track to get yourself ready for these S's. This is miss, hit is what they say about the 8Cs here, and the reason you have to hit the last one with that train of TCRs, battling TCRs ahead, is for the hairpin. Down through the gearbox and now dropping down towards the bridge and the second entrance onto the track for the tourist laps. Effectively halfway round now. And this is danger time for Get Speed, for Alexei Aloma. He's the first of the leading cars to see it now, climbing up out of the bridge section, passing the Audis. Christian Cronjes is right there, should there be a slip-up for Valkenhorst, past the Niki Lauda corner. And now, starting that long climb. Oh, there's still a couple of the leaders for in the TCR class for the leader to get by, and he's done that now. Well, that was pretty well handled by everybody, I would say there, Bruce Jones, because it really didn't break up the TCR battle. Christian Cronjes did get up towards the back of the Get Speed car, but he hasn't been able to capitalise as now they make that long climb to the bottom of the Starstrecke.
Yeah, no, very even Stevenson. I think the sim racers and the people running the TCR class cars have learnt lessons. It's not always easy to see what's coming up behind you, particularly with the closing speeds of the GT3 runners. But just before they got to that sequence of cars that behaved so well and stuck to the left of the track, saw a little bit of a mistake from Alexei Aloma. I don't know how much his tyres are helping him or hindering him at the moment, but he just got a little bit oversteery, which certainly won't be good for the rubber beneath him. And now it's down to, well, the last timing split put them at 0.4 of a second. It's half of that. It's only 2 car lengths between them as they go out of the carousel and continue on round the lap. But really, the hunter, Christian Cronjes, is putting in a fantastic charge. He's so close, but where is the next bunch of traffic up ahead of them? It's been weathered, if you will, by Alexei Aloma. He got past that 6-car grouping of TCR runners and doing a good job, but I just feel there's a bit more life in the BMW's tyres to give them chase. That's what I feel, John. Yeah,
I think you might be right there. They've been trading fastest laps, but that now was almost a couple of laps ago, 3 laps ago, in fact. And I said at the time, Bruce, when we were finishing up lap 4, when they were pushing as hard as possible, I wondered how much they were actually taking out of the tyre life as they go through Brunchen, through the ice curve, and heading now and picking up the pace as they head down to Flansgarden. Love this area of the circuit. It's that sweeping, fast, rhythmic section where if you know the track, you can make up a huge amount of time on someone who's going, oh, now which way does it go here? Use all of the block paving on driver's left as you're charging down the hill. Get your braking point right. It's tricky. You're sort of turning in as you're braking over the culvert, and you can't afford to go wide on the left-hander either because there's a gravel trap so close to the edge. Drop into the Kleiner carousel, and you can pop out of that one much earlier than the big carousel earlier in the lap. Then the Gallows Hill corner, Gallenkopf, as they head back down that Dottinger Höhe and back towards home.
But, John, what we have at the moment is that fantastic battle between Aloma and Cronjes for the lead of the race. But Kenneth Gulbrandsen, who's now the second Norwegian in the top 3, he's down in 3rd place for WRT. His Audi is 11 seconds further back. He's only a second clear of Bruno Spengler's BMW. But what we have is, with 5 laps on the board, coming to the end of the 6th, is a lot of the tail end, the second half of the top 10, made their pit stops last time around. We have a few coming in after 4 laps. Half a dozen have come in after 5, and I reckon this time around we'll see the front 2 runners diving in, unless I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of tyre life. But it's 41 degrees track temperature. I don't think they'll be going for a 7th lap. Do you?
Well, looks like they're pulling. Well, the BMW isn't, but the AMG goes on. So the AMG BMW, the team Get Speeds, Vodafone sponsored AMG, goes on to that 7th lap as Christian Cronjes hits the pits. Now, remember, in the GT3 category, the top class, you have no choice but to put all 4 tyres on, so there's no tactical advantage to be gained there. if you put the fuel hose on, then you must put 4 tyres on. If you don't put the fuel hose on and you're just changing drivers, then at the end of the race there's no requirement. That's how I read the regs. And I've talked to a few teams about that who were talking about possibly looking at that last time, and then they didn't do it. They left drivers in at the end, and of course that would have saved Williams Esports as well. They would probably have still got the podium, have won the race. They could have just done a quick driver change because they had enough fuel on board, and they wouldn't have had to change their tyres. So Aloma
we've had evolution of race tactics, John.
Oh yeah, we have.
Not just because of temperature, but because of also last time out, of course, the car that won, the Williams Esports car, exceeded driver stint time, so that cost the victory. It didn't just cost the victory, it cost them 4 points. That knocked them down the championship. But earlier in the season, we had, I think it was the BS competition. BMW didn't get it right in terms of number of tyres going on the car. On these small things, they held up their hands afterwards, owned up to the mistake. But that's why consistency is king. That's why Marla Racing Team have been always there or thereabout with their Audi. Not today so far, up to 5th place at the moment, but I mean that's a pit stop. But it's about reading the rule book, and we were absolutely impressed with how thick the digital rule book was.
And also how the driver briefings go on. I had a little listen in to the driver briefing in English earlier on via digital methods, and in fact that's carried forward. Some of these lessons are carrying forward in the real world in our socially distanced time. The driver briefing for the 24-hour series race down in Portimao this weekend was all done digitally. There were some slight changes to scrutineering in the real world with the real cars as well to take into account short social distancing. They're only allowed 4 mechanics working on the car, and if they can't be socially distanced, they've got to wear masks, etc. Only 2 mechanics and the lollipop man allowed in the pit lane, etc, etc, etc. And lessons can be learned, and certainly in terms of our coverage of the real world racing this weekend, we're putting into place some of the lessons that we've gained and some of the tricks that we've been taught by our colleagues in sim racing world as well. All right, we're coming down to the end of the first hour, almost a third of the way through, with the big tactical change at the front. Alexi Aloma leading and has not yet stopped. The lead car has not yet stopped for the team that is Vodafone Team Get Speed. That was the pole sitting car, so they've gone on to their 7th lap. We'll expect them in at the end of this lap, and then we've got to see whether those that stopped earlier have a performance advantage on the new tyre.
Alles begann mit 2 Freunden und einer Vision. Unsere Initialen stehen für Qualität und Fortschritt. Wir schaffen den Technologietransfer von der Rennstrecke auf die Straße. Wir fertigen Gewindefahrwerke, Sportfedersätze, Stabilisatoren, Distanzscheiben und Gewindefedern zu 100% in Deutschland. Wir arbeiten mit Herzblut und Hingabe für diesen einen Moment. Wir sind Motorsport. Wir sind H&R.
So heading towards the first hour of competition completed, live in sound and vision. Radio Show Limited, our colleagues at Race Sport TV in the DNLS, Digital Nürburgring Langstrecken Series, powered by VCO. Bruce Jones and John Hindhaugh with the English language commentary. Bruce already looking forward to getting back to racing in the real world at the end of this month on the circuit here. And we are waiting to see whether Alexei Aloma, who started from pole position and has not been headed in the Vodafone Team Get Speed at AMG, peels into the pit lane at the end of this lap. Looking at the top of the field, the top three, Bruce, by my reckoning, have not yet pitted. They've all gone for the 7 laps opening stint.
Top 5?
Oh yes, of course, because Foley and Sami Matti, their first pit stop actually wasn't a pit stop. They started from the pit lane.
Exactly so, yes. But I just wanted to point out Jack Sedgwick, one of the cars that has made a pit stop and come back out for the Man Filter HTP Winwood team, is flying. He's down in 9th place. Don't forget that bright yellow car was fighting over 4th or 5th position with the Schnitzelarm Mercedes, but he's set some really impressive sector times on his outlap. So watch for him. Fresh rubber, really going for it in that number 48 Mercedes.
Sitting in 9th for Jack. He's normal Man Filter Team HTP partner, and in fact they were a winning partnership last time out. Is busy in the real world with the 24 hours at Portimao this weekend, and that is with the same team, which with the HTP Winwood team as well, and qualified the car on pole position. Phil Ellis driving with Indy Donchi, Russell and Bryce Ward in their Mercedes GT3, one of the 2019 updated cars down there. We'll bring you coverage of that later on this afternoon, going into the evening, 7 o'clock UK time. Join Johnny Palmer, Nick Damon and myself for that one, taking you through till midnight. And we'll have on boards through the night until we pick it up for the run for the flag. And if you want to catch the first couple of hours of that, you'll be able to watch that on replay via radio-show.co.uk, because you're not tearing yourself away from this at the moment. Of course not. Sindre Sestra in second place for Core Sim Racing. The Team RSO Cayman has gone through. Is that on pit stop there? Have they stopped? Because that car was leading, wasn't it?
I'll scroll back down. I was just about to say, but those that haven't done, nobody's going for an 8th lap in the GT3 class. Surprise, surprise. Alexia Loma has fired its pits.
Yes.
As well. Robbie Foley be coming in. So it's all changing. They're doing driver changes so far. Well, certainly Bortolotti has taken over from the 88 Audi. Alexia Loma still listed as sitting in the race leading car in the pits.
Right, so they haven't done their driving. And I was right. Niels Carstensen has not yet stopped in the Team RSO 397, so that's a slightly false reading at the head of the SP10. I keep wanting to call that Cup 3 because that's what it's been with all the Caymans in, but of course it's a full GT4 category. Here come the leaders in SP3T, the TCR class. Schürtler leads them in for Heusingfeld 404. Then Sim RC TCR Felix Luding was second as he came into the pits. So that was a swap round before they came into the pits. Kimmo Suominen is in third for Core, and they're all pitting at the same time. Alexei did stay at the head of the field now.
He stayed in the car, whereas all those behind have changed drivers. So, actually, Marshall Marshevitz in the Schnitzelarm car in second place has also stayed on board. Their expertise clearly being desired for the first half of the race, at least. Then Scott Michaels is the first of the changes. That's the Walkenhorst BMW in third. Top 3 cars just covered by 3.5 seconds. It's closed. An hour of racing has just about elapsed, and let's see what Michaels can do. I said he was very quick on his outlap, and he's continuing to really put in some great sector times.
And it is that time of the race when my first pit stop's about to come up, not to leave the commentary area, but I've just been reminded with almost an hour gone, it's time for a nice cup of Tregothnan tea, which is another Nürburgring tradition of us. Peter Kate it was from Aston Martin Racing who introduced us to British grown and produced tea from the
In
Tregothnan
Cornwall,
estate.
presumably.
Yes, absolutely right. From the Tregothnan.
TRE prefix.
Yeah, from the Tregothnan estate down in Cornwall. And I do like their Great British tea blend. It's very good indeed. Just very refreshing. And we always say in the 24 hours, never underestimate the restorative powers of a good cup of tea. We normally take some of it with us to Le Mans, which of course should have been this weekend, but we'll be having our digital 24 hours next weekend with iRacing, and expecting a huge number of entries. By far the biggest online racing event of the year, has been for many years now, and we'll be covering the top split, the top 50 in that throughout the 24 hours. Details coming next week. Watch the socials and radio-show.co.uk for more details. One thing I will tell you, and I don't think this has been embargoed, so hopefully I'm not betraying any confidences here. I'm told that because it's iRacing, of course you can set the time of year when you're doing the racing. And I'm told, Bruce, that next weekend will be the actual time that we have the race, but the race will be taking place in the weather and lighting conditions that the real race will happen in September. So it will be the September dates that are programmed into iRacing. So 3.5 hours more darkness running than it would be in this weekend when it should have happened in the longest daylight part of the year. So an interesting little wrinkle to the iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans next weekend. I believe that is going to be the case, and I think that's a cracking idea, because it'll give us a much better idea when it's going to get dark in September.
Exactly so, John. We saw with iRacing with the Monza 12 Hours, they did exactly the same. It was supposed to be held in March, even though we had the race virtually in June, and yet we had the right level of light and everything. But to me, the one detail that's vital, so vital, the Le Mans 24 Hours will be observed. It's nothing to do with the racing. It's the fact I'll order some rillettes and some baguette to accompany me for the race.
That's a good idea. That's a very good. I have long since run out of my Sarthoise rillette that I picked up. In fact, when I was coming back from seeing the guys at HTP Winwood in the real world before what Eve is calling the big pause.
What big pause you have.
Yes, it's why the big pause?
Yes, why the long face? Very, very close to second place at the moment. But Scott Michaels, I said he was quick when he came out of the pits. He's right on the tail of Marcel Marcevitz. Marcevitz did the first stint. He's in the second. Don't suppose he's tired, but he's really got to be on his toes. And I must say that Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW looks very, very handy indeed. In fact, both of them are running third and sixth. It's about to be second and sixth, because I can see the big screen Schnitzelarm written in very large letters, because simply with the onboard camera from Scott Michaels' BMW, he was about half a metre away from the tail of that. And that's quite a thought at any point around the Nürburgring Nordschleife to be that close.
Yeah, you've got to be really confident of what's going on around you. Past the number 307, that's one of the new BMWs, and that is running. And that's Timo Glock, actually, which I think is very funny that the real world Timo Glock is actually in iRacing, Timo Glock 2, because somebody had an iRacing account with Timo Glock's name before he did. He's in the BS Hype 307, and he is sitting in fourth best of the BMWs. That's going to put him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in SP10 in that car at the moment.
Well, it's a 12-car class, so unfortunately for him that means he's towards the tail. But one thing I'm just picking up at the moment is the fact that Marcel Marcevitz in his second stint is not responding as well to the new set of tyres as race leader Alexia Loma. Don't forget, I just said at the start of this lap there seemed to be about 3 seconds covering the top 3 drivers. So right now it's out to 5 and a bit, because Loma is really getting clear of Marcevitz, as Marcevitz is being monstered by Scott Michaels. Nearly 5 seconds between first and second now, half a second between second and third, but it's looking very good for our pole man, Alexia Loma.
It's Bruce Jones. I'm John Hindhoff. Just again, next weekend, the iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans, expecting somewhere near 1,500 teams to enter in effectively a parallel universe. Can't get them all on the track at the same time, and neither would we want to. And that will be in the one that starts European time. There'll be another version of that that'll start 12 hours before as well. And we saw some of the teams doing the DN24 run both of those. So effectively running a 36-hour race around the Nürburgring in 2 separate time zones, 12 apart. But effectively, that meant that team members in the middle 12 hours of that were competing in 2 different versions of the same race, which blows my mind completely. At different times of the days, 12 hours apart. So jumping out of the car in the middle of the night, you might have been jumping into the earlier starting race whilst it was 12 hours later, and I just can't even get my head around that, which is why we saw some of the teams doing 4-hour stints around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. The top split will be the top 50 teams by their rating. A couple of wild cards I would expect in there as well, but expect to see some big real world names as well as royalty from sim racing, the sim racing world, as they have to be paired together. You can't have a full team of sim racers, you've got to have some real racing drivers in there as well, and we'll be covering that for you next Saturday and Sunday, sharing the coverage with our colleagues, our very knowledgeable colleagues from racespot.tv. Oh, and there's a spin.
And it's one of the BMWs from the top class. Is that the BS competition car?
I think it was, Bruce. Good spot. Right in front of...
It's Conor De Filippi on his debut in the championship. Of course, he knows the circuit really well from all his runs.
Spot on, Bruce. It was absolutely. And he was coming... Well, now was that... I think that's just coming out of Brunchen, isn't it? Heading up the hill to the ice curve.
You just need a slightly wider angle to see that. I think you're possibly right. Certainly it's an area where, I think you've nailed it, John.
Yeah. But had he already had an incident? That's the question. Or did he get picked up by somebody going through? It looks like there's already damage to the car. Oh, no, he reversed it. Oops. He reversed it into the wall. Well, he's actually done pretty well there. Bit of a deranged rear wing, which I don't think happened in that accident there. But Conor De Filippi's been racing in the IMSA iRacing Pro Series. Got a decent top 10 result on Thursday, I seem to remember.
You mentioned just a few moments ago, John, about how some drivers are happy to almost enter 2 versions of the same race. Basically, they often used to say that a lot of the top drivers, one of the main parts of their character is being greedy to make sure they get the best car, the best tyres. But some of these drivers are just greedy because they want to get as much racing as they possibly can. In fact, in today's race, we've got 2 drivers, Alex Arana for the Marla Racing team and Richard Westbrook for Phoenix, the Phoenix Racing team in his Audi. They're doing this race and the virtual Le Mans. So they simply can't get enough of the racing at the moment, which is great. I love it.
So second and third together again. And Scott Michaels now gets the opportunity to examine every single square millimetre of the back of the Schnitzelham Racing Mercedes AMG, as his teammate was earlier on in the race. So despite the pit stop and despite one of the drivers being changed over, Marcevic stayed in the car. He's the man who started, Scott Michaels, having jumped into the Valkenhorst number 34. But the battle is exactly resumed, although it is, at the moment at least, Bruce, for second and third position, where it was for, I think, 4th and 5th before, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you see, what happens is that Cronje's got that Walkenhorst 34 BMW up into second place. Don't forget, he also got really, really close to Alexia Loma, but right now, Michaels cannot get past Markovic, and that's allowing Alexia Loma, who came in a lap later, did a 7th lap on tyres. Must have really been a problem in this high temperature day, 41 degrees track temperature at the start. But Alexia Loma now 6 seconds clear, so while Michaels did really well at the start of his stint, the fact he came out behind Markovic has cost him really big time.
Yeah, and that's work. That early stop was work for Markovic. Remember, he was one of the ones who stopped at the end of lap. Yes, at the beginning of lap 5. Absolutely right. So that's work for him. He's now, another 4 laps in. So he's done as much on these tyres as he did on his first set of tyres, and now he'll be going into new territory at the end of this lap. Bit of a headlamp flash at Callanhard as he charges down the hill, and the Cayman dutifully gets out of the way. I'm watching Jack Sedgwick as well, Bruce, in the 48, 4th position for that car at the moment, and that's another car that stopped at the end of lap 4. Remember, it was Marvin Deans who started that car, so they have improved their position as well by doing that early stop. But what we will have to see, with still an hour and 50 minutes to go, so 110 minutes till the checkered flag comes out, we'll have to see how that strategy plays out towards the end of the race, and whether some of these teams who went long have to do a little splash and go at the end.
Well, I think Alexia Loma and Team Get-Speed Performance are in the driving seat, not just leading by 5 seconds or so, but the fact they did that 7-lap stint on the opening stint, 7 laps, that gives them wriggle space to change their tactics accordingly. Right. So they've done the really hard work, and they're still at the front of the field. So I'd say that was an inspired decision for them, because, of course, their tyres at the end of the race would be 1 lap less used than their rivals.
We haven't seen Fabian Schiller in that car, whose name was on the original entry list that I got, in fact, and the updated one on Friday. And we haven't seen Fabian. I suspect he'll do a full stint in the middle, and then presumably Alexei will jump back in again at the end, and they'll be watching very carefully to make sure that the driving time isn't exceeded by any of their drivers. Remember, 2 hours maximum out of the 3 by a single driver, and with Alexei having done, maybe not actually, well, no, they'll have to make 2 driver changes, so
exactly. So yeah. I think they Schiller's fine. I think with every lap, Loma's just gaining a little bit more, which again gives them tactical breadth, if you will, the scope to try different numbers of laps. Jack Sedgwick, as you mentioned, going very well, but I must say the previous lap by Scott Michaels, just a 1/10 of a second down on the fastest lap of the race. He's got onto the tail of Marcel Vaccic, but he cannot find a way past. He'll be fuming on board the 34 BMW. Nothing unfair. Marcel Marcevic doing a fantastic job in the number 11 Schnitzelarm Mercedes, but this is a potential victory, first victory of the year for Walkenhorst Motorsport, going away from them.
Tea has arrived, so that's good news. Has such a wonderful aroma to Grothendam tea, and I'm being spoiled by my team manager. I've got the Linton Sprudel chocolate as well to get me through the next couple of hours.
I've got some chocolate from Mirza Ruth. Private chocolatiers.
Excellent.
Anyhow, no more of that. I've got a banana for later in the race. It's sitting on top of a Porsche 917 on in front of my screens.
That's a hell of a big banana, mate. Or is it a small 917?
Alas, the latter.
If only.
Size model.
It is, of course, the big anniversary this weekend for Porsche, with their first win at Le Mans in 1970. And I read a tremendous piece from Richard Atwood, just remembering back to that historic victory for the red and white number 23 back in 1970s, a little before my time at Le Mans, but that doesn't mean I'm not still interested in it. When people say, I can't remember, that's before my time. Yes, but
you know what? Get some books and find out more about them before your time.
I completely agree.
Also, it's one of the coolest looking cars, that Porsche Salzburg entry, the red with the white pinstripes. You know, sometimes, John, you look at a colour scheme, a race livery, and you think it looks quite good, but some seem to mature as the years pass. And it made the 917, which was a very delicate-looking car, look even more delicate against, of course, at that stage it had just had its battles with the more brutal Ford GT40s. But it's a fantastic livery, and I loved it when Porsche brought it back a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's one of those timeless ones, really, Bruce, that just seems to me to keep on working. We had the Pink Pig as well, we had the Derek Bell white and blue car. Porsche are quite eager to revisit their classic liveries, and my goodness, they've got plenty to choose from, haven't they?
Exactly so. And for Porsche Salzburg, of course, they had the flip one, white with the red pinstripes as well. But you see, It looked like a non-works livery, which indeed it was. But also privateers, when you run a team, you've got full scope. You don't have to link into any corporate colours. And that's why some of the best ever liveries, to my eye, are those that were entered by the privateer teams, particularly those that had a benefactor who could underwrite all the bills. You didn't need that nasty writing all over the place. And of course, that was the sort of age back in the late 60s, early 70s. And I think that's why that livery is so much loved. What is happening? Schnitzelarm still holding that second place. Still Scott Michaels being boxed up behind. But with every lap, you'd have to say, chance of Walkenhorst taking their first win this year. They've had a second, they've had a third. It's getting tougher and tougher for them. They've got to make that move into second and then pull away.
It's Bruce Jones, I'm John Hindhoff, and an hour and 45 minutes, so not still even at half distance. Here's how it stands. The battle for second and third is just heading on to the Nordschleife right now, and they are 6 seconds near enough behind Alexei Aloma, who's been driving the Vodafone team GetSpeed AMG GT3 since the start of the race. He plonked the car on pole position with an impressive qualifying effort. So it's Markovic for Schnitzelarm, the light-coloured, almost the Manti Grello coloured AMG, isn't it, for Scott Michaels and Walkenhorst. Then 6.5 seconds further back, Jack Sedgwick has used tactics and speed to take that car up to the Manfilter Team HTP Winwood car up to 4th position, and they have done one driver change. Phoenix Max Hoffer is in 5th position in the 44, another 6.5 seconds further back, and then the same distance back to Team BMW, back to 107, and it's Niels Koch behind the wheel of that car. Ben Tuck has taken over the number 35 Walkenhorst BMW in 7th position. Mirko Bortolotti introduced into the action for E-Team WRT. The 88 car is in 8th. Marvin Otterbach is in 9th. And rounding off the top 10, the HR BMW Team Green Hell BMW, that is Jens Klingmann in the 10th position in the 112. Porsche Cup, Simon Grossman now leads the Sim RC Cup 2 from Asher Racing's Martin Hirak. That's 276 from 227, and all of a sudden there's 11 seconds between those two cars. Black Falcon another 6.5 seconds further back in 3rd. That's the Porsche GT Cup category. That's effectively the Porsche Carrera Cup cars. We've got a new class this week, which is SP10 GT4. That's combining the Porsche 718 GT4 Club Sports and the BMW GT4s, the M4s. That's a brand new car for iRacing. And the top 4 positions are held by Porsches. Sindre Setsas back to the front after his pit stop with Core Sim Racing. He took over the 303 at the stop and is around about 11.5 seconds ahead of Sascha Berger for Zorg Rennsport, who's got 4 seconds, and Sim RC's Marcel Fassbender. That's 303, 333 and 376. Then Team RSO led for a little while, but they did also pit stop the 397, but they've got around about 6 seconds on the first of the BMWs, the 301 from Team Heusingfeld. Then Ad Hoc Game, he's only another 2 seconds further back. Fabio Gross in the 369. Bastos Salmon for AVA Simsport in 5th. That's another Porsche. And Michael Schmidt for 4 Motors in 6th. Timo Glock next up in 7th for BAS Hype. So he's moved up 3 places since we last saw Timo. And finally, last but by no means least, SP3T, that's TCR to you and I. Marcel T for Team Heusingfeld leads in the 404 from Patrick Kavinci for Core Sim Racing. How many times have we seen those two teams battling it out? T3, Oliver Ackerman, not too far back, another 6.5 seconds. He's only got 3/10 on Lars Boll, the 485 Full Send Racing team. And the top 6 is made up by Nicholas Schneider for Zorg Rennsports and DOT's XE Esports, Fredo Kuhlmann in the 486. That's how it stands, with Alexei Aloma still leading at the front of the field for that bright red Vodafone Team GetSpeed AMG GT3. 6.5 seconds, Bruce Jones in the sunshine as he heads out to the bottom of the run up the hill to the Caracciola carousel.
As you say, John, 6.5, 6.75 seconds. It's a really good second stint for Alexei Aloma. Don't forget, let's just go over the he's coming towards, he's halfway around his 10th lap. This car, the Racing Get Speed Mercedes, was the last of the front runners. A handful of them stayed out for 7 laps on their first stint. Some did 4, some did 5, some did 6. That is a massive sway. But of course, those that went short to start with, they're going to have to do longer second, third and fourth stints if they want to split it that way. Those that have the option to take shorter final stints, those that stayed out longer. Stay with me on this one, but for Alexei Aloma, this is a dream run. Now, as you say, just need to get it between 6 and 7 seconds clear. He's not being troubled from behind. And they've got scope to decide when they want to make those final pit stops. Those who pitted early, their scope is far more limited. It must be said that the longer run at the front, 6 or 7 laps, was definitely the right way to go, as far as I can understand at this point in the race, on that first stint. I don't think those that stopped laps are going to be able to shout. But then again, I liked them.
It's Bruce Jones. Saw Gren Sport, Sasha Berger trying to close down the white and tangerine of Sindre Sessas. He's got another one of the Asher Racing livery cars in behind him. That's Marcel Fassbender. That yellow, very distinctive yellow front end, and then the darker three-quarter hindquarters, if you will, the black rear end of that car. Just 2.8 seconds between them. Off the ground, on the far side of the circuit, one of the 2 or 3 places that you get airborne just as you're in the run up towards the Brunchen area, so Wipperman sort of area. Now through Brunchen. As soon as I get to Brunchen around the circuit, whenever I'm driving, I kind of think to myself, right, okay, yeah, more than halfway around now.
You don't relax though, John.
No, you can't. Can't, Bruce.
You can't even relax along dotting a her, because someone's normally going to be around you. But
well, and also you've got to steel yourself for that ridiculously quick entry into the end of the lap through, Tiergarten and the last chicane. It's absolutely, I mean, that is take a deep breath, and you probably so as you go through underneath Bilstein, which is, I mean, it's a corner, but it's barely a corner. You'd want to turn the wheel as little as possible there, and you just almost look through the corner and let the car follow you with as little hand movement as possible. But sort of as you go on the downhill section there, you take a deep breath, and you probably don't exhale till you're back on the Grand Prix circuit, because that next little 3-4 corner section is so fast, and you have to be inch perfect, because there's literally no runoff there. You almost, in fact, you do aim at the end of the Armco on the left-hand side in the middle of that final chicane, and just work out that if you're going fast enough, you'll actually miss it. And that's basically what you're aiming at. It's an extraordinary end to the track. So you're right, you absolutely cannot let your concentration wander for a moment and think, is this my 6th lap or my 7th? And, oh, I've hit the wall.
yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary that for the Nürburgring Nordschleife, revered around the world, 70+ corners. The fact that for some drivers, and you've just absolutely encapsulated that, the first 23 kilometres, they're thinking about the final sequence of corners. They're going through the previous 68 3/4 turns, and then thinking about that Bremskurve Tiergarten combination, and more importantly, the barrier that literally looks though it's side on across the track as you come over the brow, which is the entrance to the final corner. It's bad enough for on your own, but in a group of cars, and we've seen it, have we not? A couple of rounds ago, the first 2 cars colliding, yes. Final corner on the final lap. So it's always a factor.
Now,
we're looking to see who's really flying, but Alexei Aloma doing he's just banged in an 8-minute 2.2, just a fraction of a second, about a 1/10 of a second off the fastest lap of the race. So his tyres are working well for him. He's, again, just under 7 seconds clear, but certainly looking settled, and they'll be so pleased they did that 7-lap opening stint. It gives them all the scope I think they require for victory.
Timo Glock has Stefan Ebert right in his wheel tracks at the part of the track we were talking about. Look how late Glock is on the brakes there. You see the brake lights flash on from the leading BMW M4 GT4 of that pair, he was well into that final chicane. So you go through the left-hand part, you're climbing up, so the hill does help you. So you go through the left-hand part, you're still hard on the throttle. It's really hard to do that. And just as you're coming to the apex of the right hand, you sort of get on the brakes. You can't jump on the brakes. You've got to build up the pressure and then push it a little bit harder, and then a little bit harder, and then you're down through the gearbox for the rest of the corner. It is really, really difficult corner to. Now, you can drive it slowly very easily, Bruce, but if you're not going to lose time or even make up a bit of time there, it's super committed, isn't it?
Just depends who owns the car, John, really. How much you like them.
Yeah, who's got dibs on the payment plan for any who's paying for the china, as we used to say when we were playing cricket in our younger days, and somebody put it over someone's fence. Is it pay for your own china?
The greenhouse.
Yeah, greenhouse on the shed window.
Who is making moves. Very impressive couple of laps from Niels Koch. He's still down in 6th place overall for Team BMW Bank, but he's cutting into lead. He's halved the advantage that Max Hoffer has in the Phoenix Racing Audi in 5th, but it's just who's got tyres that are sweet. In fact, that was the fastest lap of the race last time around. No, second fastest. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That still stays with Christian Cronjes. 8 minutes, 2.002 seconds is the fastest. Think about that. 8 minutes flat, effectively around 24.15 kilometres. And they're not straight kilometres, are they, John?
No, not at all. Not at all. Good to see some of the other competitors around the circuit in these very accurately modelled different categories of cars. At the front, Alexei, I could have put this on a hotkey, couldn't I? Just could have recorded this earlier. Alexei Aloma for Vodafone Team GetSpeed, still leading. And that lead, Bruce, just starting to ease out a little bit now. Marcel Markovits and Scott Michaels less than a second behind them, but now 8 seconds behind the bright red Vodafone car.
Yeah, the other thing that's worth pointing out is that Scott Michaels, after all his attempts to get past Markovits, is nearly a second down. So Markovits can relax a bit. But the previous lap, we're just talking about it, I mean, it's 2.2 for Alexei Aloma. That's why he was able to stretch that advantage by 1.5 seconds. And that's pretty good at this stage in the race. Some of the teams will be thinking about making their second round of pit stops. We've got 10 laps on the board. Some stopped at the end of lap 4. So those that want to do sixes, and most of the teams will be doing 6-lap stints, will need to start coming in this time around. Just trying to see if anybody of the top runners has been in the pits for another visit. Well, certainly poor old René Rast. They've done 3 pit visits, but I think they actually started from the pits. Could be wrong, 1-3-3. No, I'm not sure about that, actually. Look back at my notes, they probably started at the tail of the pack. But anyhow, good to have René competing in the top class.
Just over 8 seconds then. Still Jack Sedgwick putting in decent times as well in 4th position. Keep an eye on that Manfilter Team HTP Winward car in 4th, as he was one of the early stoppers. Took over from Marvin Dienst at the end of the 4th lap. Coming to the end of lap number 11 now, so that we'll start to see, Bruce, shortly how the tactics are going to play out from some of those early stoppers, and whether they're going to do 6-lap stints to bring the cars home from here, or whether they're going to try and stretch it to 7 laps, and those 4-lap stints will take them to the 23, 24. Even if we were to go to 24 laps, that would work out with 7-lap stints from here.
Yeah, we've already actually started to have some runners make that second round of pit stops. I just mentioned it. Those that have done so, Michael Bezouk is now in the Adrenaline Motorsport BMW. Søren Galoggi, the Ring Fitzia Sim Racing entry as well. They've made their second pit stops. They probably were the group that did 4 laps on the opening stint. They might have stretched it to 6 or 7 for the second. They're now down outside the top 10. Still waiting for a show of hands from Alexei Aloma and GetSpeed Racing. But 8 seconds to the good. That's such a nice cushion for them to use. But they've already sort of effectively rolled the dice by doing that 7-lap opening stint. That's just space they need.
I do like this change of, or this variety of tactics, in the same as we've got a variety of manufacturers at the front. Marco Bortolotti sitting in 8th position in the 88 for for E-Team WRT, running their real-world colours as well. He's got about 10 seconds behind him and about 12 seconds in front of him. So he's in isolation in terms of his class position at the moment, but you never really have a clear lap, seldom have a clear lap, other than the first lap here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. The advantage in sim racing, of course, that we have is there are only 50 cars out there, not 170, as we probably 150 to 170. I think the upper limit now, even for the N24, has been capped at 170. First year I was there in 2007, which was this weekend in 2007, interestingly enough. We started 229 cars. It sticks in my memory exactly. It was the weekend after Le Mans, and it was the weekend before Le Mans, and it was 229 cars. And I remember it was this weekend because it was my first wedding anniversary, having been married in the week of Le Mans the previous year in 2006. 14 very happy years celebrated this week, and believe it or not, the first time that we have been able to celebrate our wedding anniversary in our own house. First time we've been at home.
Well, everyone wants a sort of summer wedding, but we do forget that motor racing tends to happen in the months where the sun shines. Perhaps you could always have it in your own house if you did it in the end of November, but we don't think like that, do we?
Yes.
Looking to see who's making the moves. The Mahler Racing Team, 13th place overall, will rise when the pit stops come to be.
Yeah.
Don't forget, they're the championship leaders. They started at the tail of the pack. They may well come on strong. Alex Arana, who's racing here, he's also doing the virtual Le Mans this weekend. He's got a lot to do, but he's been putting in some decent laps. But it really is, how should we say, recovering from a disappointment. Start at the back. You can't just drive to the front, however good you are. And Alex partnered this weekend by Sami Matti-Trogan, so he's got probably one of the other quickest drivers in the field. Yet it just goes to show you've got to pick your way up through the field, and that's not easy on the Nordschleife at all. And in GT3 they started 21st out of, I think, the 21 starters. And though they're trying to fight back, it's a really, really tricky one for them.
So Bruce, we're still... Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say race leader into the pits. That was Alexia Loma. Of course, he'll have to hand the car over to Fabian Schiller, but it's still Alexi's name on the screen at the moment. But now Jack Sedgwick leading the race for Team HTP Filters.
Yeah, that's a good run by these guys. They've used the pit stops very well indeed. So Sedgwick leading at the moment. So was that a stop there by the Vodafone car?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Sorry, took my eyes off that.
No, so did I. I was checking something else, scrolling down. So the second stop has been made. So they did 7 laps and then 4. Okay, so they've got their short stint in, and now they can control it to the end of the race.
Now, so that would suggest to me that so this 4-lap stint that we've seen it now in 2 different places tactically from the teams, with some of the teams doing these 4-lap stints. The short stint, as Bruce was describing it earlier on, was done at the start. We've seen sometimes teams do a 2-lap stint at the start. Certainly Agustin Canapino and Alex Arana did that for a couple of races in the Audi, didn't they? And they made
sometimes
that work
they had it damaged though, John.
Yes,
sometimes
that's true.
Damage. Remember that Canapino was leading, I think, about round 3, and he was taken out halfway around the opening lap. The rest of the pack came through. The car was clattering off the barriers, and so they had to serve the time in the pits to get that damage sorted. Some of the other damage that drivers have picked up over the course of this series in the individual races, they think it's all right. I can run my normal stint. It may be slowing the car slightly, but I'm not going to come in for an extra pit stop or a very early pit stop and ruin our tactics.
I have news from GetSpeed, and thank you for tweeting at RSL_studio. My entry list earlier on had, in the week, had Fabian Schiller involved. Now, Fabian's not been able to join us this weekend, and because of the fact that there is no pro real-world driver in GetSpeed, they're doing a lone wolf race with Alexi. So Alexi's going to do the full 3 hours, which is allowed but they have to serve a drive-through. They knew the rule, and we just have had a chance to fulfill it, say get speed. So they've come in and driven through, so that wasn't a pit stop in the fullest sense of the words, Bruce. Sadly, they're saying all of our drivers aren't available this weekend. Let's see how this works out towards the end. So yes, that was a 4-lap stint, but it will become a whatever it is to the next stop, because there would have been no service allowed there for the Get Speed team. So that's an extra trip down the pit lane with no service, because of the fact that Alexei Aloma is doing the race on his own, and that is one of those supplementary regulations that we were talking about. They knew that. They've advised the organisers of that, so Alexei will be doing the race to the end. So he's got to keep his concentration up, no mean feat there, and he has dropped track position without having the advantage of putting a new set of tyres and filling up. So that's their drive-through now completed. They can now resume, Bruce, their pit stop strategy for tyres and fuel.
Well, congratulations there for Vodafone Team Get Speed, because just as I was saying that, I started thinking, well, that was a very short pit stop. It was a drive-through, because I'm thinking, how has he managed to emerge in second place? Great answers, and again, it shows us the twists on the rules and the way you can play this. Another driver who seems to be down for singleton entry is, on my entry list, is Race Union, Marvin Otterbach. He's 5th place overall, have yet to get a second driver this time for him. Another one who looks like who's driving on his own with Dirk Muller, but Adam Christodoulou is showing that Black Falcon Mercedes. Adam, I think, is on board at the moment, but some way down the order, yes, he's down in 15th place in class, 8th place overall, but I'll keep an eye and see if anybody else gets into the 87 Audi for Race Union. But right now, Marvin Otterbach doing a decent job there, but at least now we have explanation of how Iloma's served the 2 pit stops and yet is in second place.
Yeah, exactly so. Exactly so. Busy weekend. We're calling it our best of both worlds, Saturday and Sunday, here with the DNLS, looking at surely the most challenging circuit, whether in virtual or real world, and the top drivers competing in round 6 of the DNLS powered by VCO. This is the H&R 3-hour race as part of the championship, which runs through till October this year in the virtual world. The Mann-Filter car leading at the moment, Jack Sedgwick's. A little bit of damage on the front right-hand side of that. We've got full metal or perhaps full carbon racing coming your way as well this weekend. It's already got underway at Portimao. You can catch up with it at the end of this event via our player, and then join us for live coverage into the evening hours and the darkness at Portimao at 7 o'clock UK tonight.
You talk there of the damage on the front of Jack Sedgwick's number 48 Mercedes. Don't forget he had that really fearsome battle in the opening laps, really close with a Schnitzelarm car when Marcel Marchevich was in front of him. And we also thought that Marchevich had hit the back of the 34 BMW, the Walkenhorst car that had Christian Cronjes on board. It got very, very close, 3rd back to 7th place. Cronjes worked his way forward, nearly challenged. Well, he did challenge. He got half a second off Alexei Aloma. But right now, the 34 BMW was in 6th position overall. Good early laps from Scott Michaels, but he's backed off a little bit. In fact, he's just served a second pit stop, as he also had a drive-through penalty. I'm trying to work out the times. Yes, on elapsed time, he could have done a second regular pit stop for the Walkenhorst BMW. Keep an eye out for that car number 34. But leading the way, it's 48, it's Mercedes.
Merkel bought a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
Go. No, yours.
Has Merkel bought a lot? He lost his rear screen on that Audi. It's from the Helicam shot.
The 88 Audi from WRT. Let's take a look.
I'll have a look at that next time.
Yeah, well, he's not near anybody. He's not fighting with anybody that could have led to. He's 5 seconds down on Niels Koch in 4th place. Now Iloma back in the pit. Sedgwick in the pit as well. 1st and 2nd in pretty much together.
Right, well, that then, in terms of stints, works very nicely for the Mann-Filter car. It was a 4-lap stint at the beginning for Marvin Dean. Sedgwick's just done 7. And is he getting out of that car, or will Jack do another stint in that machine? Remember, Marvin or another. Actually, there's only 2 drivers against that one, isn't there? Yes, there is. There are.
Yeah, did Marvin do 4 or 5 on his opening stint? I think he might have done a 5.
Stand by. Yes, he did do a 5. Yes, you're absolutely
5,
right.
and then because the ones who did 4 aren't really featuring at the moment. So he did a 5, then a 7, because they've got 12 laps on the table. There we have it.
Yeah, and Marvin will have to get back in that car at some stage to fulfil the 2 driver changes. That's part of the regulations as well. No driver can do more than 2 hours of the 3, and you must have 2 driver changes. So you can't just have one driver do 2 hours straight through and then the other driver do the last hour. The get speed car in the pits as well. Now that was a proper pit stop because that car took tyres. So
he also seems to he's out ahead of the Man HTP car.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Well. Came in behind, out ahead.
And that will be down to presumably putting a little less fuel in. Because remember, he only stopped Alexei only stopped for fuel at the end of lap 7. So he would have put a little less fuel in. The tyre stop is a wash because it takes exactly the same time. In the simulation here, it's assumed that all of the tyre changes are equally talented and all cars get the same time for 4 tyres and everyone must take 4 tyres. The fuel, and this isn't always the case at the Nürburgring, the fuel flows at the same rate, so the only difference would be how much fuel has gone into that car, because that's normally just a pistol grip petrol station type pump, and they are closely monitored. That is the reason that in the real world we have timed pit stops to help mitigate the fact that some pumps, which by the way, one pump serves 2 garages, can have up to 8 cars in 2 garages, in each garages rather, and not all pumps are equal, so that's why you have a minimum pit stop time. You see quite leisurely pit stops in the Nürburgring 24 and the NLS, the Nürburgring Endurance Series. It's just to even that out a little bit. I have to say, in the Creventic series, their fueling is done off-site, which I think is going to be out of pit lane rather, which I think is going to be partially how they do the NLS when it returns, Bruce, because I saw a pit lane map that was rather interesting. You drive down the pit lane through a garage and then into the paddock and you service at your awning effectively.
Yes, effectively there's a fast lane and there's a service lane, and you do a big loop around the paddock, then you come back out again through the neighbouring pit garage, back into the pit lane and proceed. It's a lovely map, very colourful and very clever indeed. So the teams will keep their transporters and their awnings out the back and work from there. So again, it shows people having to think on their feet, trying to get us racing again.
Yeah, good.
And the fact of the matter, June the 27th, exactly what we want. Engines fired up this weekend for the first time at Portimao. The first action, I think, effectively since proper racing action since Daytona back in January. And the green shoots are there, and I can't wait to have the full field of monsters coming out to play here. But I think a really, really cleverly thought through arrangement.
I like
it. Again, some circuits, they don't have a big enough paddock to do that.
No, exactly.
Sit on a nice patch.
Yeah,
Couldn't really do that at Imola.
Well, Imola's the next race for Creventic, and that's in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's in mid-July, and I'm waiting to. Sorry, no, that's Monza. Monza is mid-July for Creventic in the real world. Rather splendidly going back to Italy, which suffered so badly at the start of this terrible crisis with COVID-19. Talk of Mugello getting a Grand Prix, a Formula One event as well. Which I thought was mere romanticism, but hearing more and more from a number of sources. Stay tuned to Midweek Motorsport on a Wednesday night as we get more on that. But hearing more and more that is looking likely easy to control. One road in, one road out. Closed doors event, of course, and many circuits all around Europe making sure that their Grade 1 Formula 1 race licence is signed off by the FIA. Portimao made sure they upgraded from the Formula 1 test circuit. Imola, as Bruce was mentioning there, they've renewed their Formula 1 Grade 1 licence with the FIA for another 2 years to give them the opportunity. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever see Nürburgring Nordschleife again, and probably just as well, Somebody was mentioning Le Mans and the Bugatti circuit, whether that could be upgraded, and whether we could do a double header in September. F1 cars would have to cut around an awful lot of parked up trucks and marshals vehicles in that. We've still got an hour and 16 minutes to go on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, round 6 of the DNLS.
Alles begann mit zwei Freunden und einer Vision. Unsere Initialen stehen für Qualität und Fortschritt. Wir schaffen den Technologietransfer von der Rennstrecke auf die Straße. Wir fertigen Gewindefahrwerke, Sportfedersätze, Stabilisatoren, Distanzscheiben und Gewindefedern zu 100% in Deutschland. Wir arbeiten mit Herzblut und Hingabe für diesen einen Moment. Wir sind Motorsport. Wir sind H&R.
Sights and sounds of the Nürburgring Nordschleife for round 6 of the DNLS. Here's how it stands. Team BMW Bank are leading after the latest round of pit stops. The 107 car is in the hands of Niels Koch, with Mirko Bortolotti nearly 30 seconds behind in second for the Audi of E-Team WRT. That's number 88. But it's all mixed up at the moment because the strategies, it looks like somebody has just basically decided to roll a dice at the moment with the strategies as it stands. And in fact, even as we're looking on the screen, that is not what I've just given you, as the timing screen is updating itself as we go through. So I've got BMW Bank ahead of Team WRT, then Waltenhorst, then Schnitzelamm, then Vodafone, then Manfilter, then Phoenix, Waltenhorst, Adrenaline, and Race Union for the top 10.
Yeah, those top two, Koch and Bortolotti. Koch just banged in the fastest lap of the race, almost 8 minutes flat, but both Cox and Bortolotti for Team BMW Bank and WRT1, they owe us a pit stop. They only have one lap, a pit stop against their name. Who's flying at the moment? Alexia Loma. Remember that name? Yes, he started the race. He's doing the whole race. If you're just joining us, the team Get Speed Performance had to serve a drive-through penalty because unfortunately Fabian Schiller, who was penciled in to be part of the partnership, not here. So all 3 hours being done by Alexia Loma. He's down in 5th at the moment, but that once those pit stops are shuffled through, and bear in mind he's had 3 visits so far with that drive-through penalty, he should be back towards the sharp end, but maybe not just immediately. I think we could have the 34 Walkenhorst BMW listed as the race leader.
Best of both worlds on RSL and our network of audio and video channels. Great digital racing on the most challenging circuit in the world in the Nürburgring Langstracken Series. Now with this, the 6th round of the championship powered by VCO. What a great job they've done organising this and putting the regs together to ensure that we have real world and sim races together. Really great idea. been picked up by a lot of other events and championships as well. It is undoubtedly the way to go. Remember, sim racing's been happening for a very, very long time. It has an established community, like the guys at racesport.tv, who are providing us with the coverage, and who we've been working with on a number of other events as well, like the guys from iRacing, Drew Adamson, Cisco, and the guys in Boston, Massachusetts, who we've been working with on the IMSA side of things as well. Well, that hasn't sprung up overnight. It hasn't sprung up in the last 3 months when we've had no real world full metal racing, as Bruce Jones has termed that phrase. No, that's been going for years, over a decade at the very highest level. And it's good to see some of the big names being recognised now, with BMW using the likes of Alexander Voss and Lauren Heinrich to tutor and mentor their real-world stars. Katzberg, Spengler have all benefited from help from those guys. We had Maxi Benecke, 10K Benecke racing in the digital 24 hours. Oh, bit of side-by-side action there. Zorgren Sport, the Avia car, sort of muscling its way through, heading up the hill on that insanely quick part of the circuits through Klostertal and heading up towards the Steilstrecke, the bottom of the hill for the Caracciola carousel. So full-blown top quality digital racing now, and then over the rest of the weekend, the 24 hours of Portimao with the Creventic series underway now. Johnny and Nick looking after the early parts of that. At the moment, you can catch up on that with our video and audio players at the end of this race, and then join us live from 7 o'clock tonight on RS1 and RS3, plus sound and vision as well. BMW, Timo Glock into the pit lane. Timo driving one of the brand new BMW BMW M4s. That was the BS hype car coming in fourth best of the BMWs at the moment, but they are running in a class with the Porsche Caymans, and the best of them is Fabio Gross in 5th position in that SP10 GT4 class. Good to see a bit of variety in the GT4 category, and you know, well done. You've got to say well done to iRacing for continuing to improve and putting out another update recently.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it goes to just show that the evolution is so super quick. And for BMW, who obviously I've just sung their praises pretty much every weekend for the way they handle their the sim racing, they've really taken to it in 2020. Another string to their bow. Not yet on the pace those 718 Caymans that are holding down the top 4 positions, but I must say Fabio Gross has been putting in some very decent laps. As I say that, his previous one wasn't very good, but certainly the class of the M4 field, 13 seconds ahead of Andrei Rajkovic for Team Heusingfeld. And have you noticed, John, how a lot of the teams in this event have teams in the various different classes? So it just shows that they're providing plenty of scope for their customers, if you will.
Exactly so. Do you know what? I know I'm kind of getting used to seeing it again now, but I still sometimes forget what a lovely, what a classically proportioned car the Z4 was, with that long bonnet. We still have that sort of classic Grand Tourer design in the AMG GT3s and GT4s, but it's easy to forget that the BMW Z4 had that same set of proportions, Bruce.
No, entirely, John. But also one thing I've noticed through the course of the digital NLS is the fact that you often think, how come the Mercedes always seem to have a bonnet that's slightly knocked up? And I think if you have frontal contact in an Audi, the R8 LMS, it seems to stay together a bit. But with the Mercedes, you just see part of it knocked up, and the BMW's, again, a long snout, not quite as long as it is on the AMG Mercedes. You can see their frontal damage much more, and I guess that is incredibly realistic. You have the longer bonnet, it's got more scope to be knocked out of true. It's maybe not quite as, I suppose, sort of strength in a straight line impact. They're small things, but you think about Adam dotting a Hoa coming back to the bonnet slightly up the side, giving drag where you don't want it. And you know what? In this gaming with VCO, that will be super accurate in terms of the aerodynamic. So keep off the other cars. Again, yeah, I love the proportions of the Z4, which was the car we started all the success, real world, winning Spa 24 hours, Nürburgring 24 hours. Great to have.
Just looking down through the timing screen at the moment. And by the way, if you are following along on... Oh, spin right in front of the leader. The erstwhile leader, should I say. Alexei Aloma, the pole man, just coming out of the Schwalbenschwanz towards the end of the lap, and just riding that outside curb a tiny bit too much, and a real heart-stopping moment for the now 5th place former pole sitting and leading car of Alexei Aloma. Remember, he's driving on his own, so he's had to do an extra pit stop with no service, a drive through effectively. He's got Marcel Markovits in his sights now, Bruce.
Yeah, and the race leader, the effective race leader is Scott Michaels in 3rd place, because we've just had the top 2 cars, Team BMW Bank and WRT Audi, coming in. They are only now making their 2nd pit stops. They've done 2 batches of 7 laps. Bear that in mind. That could bring them in strong in the latter stage of the race. So 1, 2 and 3 will be 34 BMW, 11 Mercedes, and the man on the charge, the Vodafone Mercedes. And that could so easily have been taken out with that spinning car, John.
Well, Kenneth Gulbrandsen is back in the Team WRT car, but that car hasn't moved yet. It's off to drivers right here. So Kenneth will rejoin Kaike Schubert for Team BMW Bank. And out, Scott Michaels goes across the line. Markovits goes across the line. Aloma goes across the line. And the 2 cars are still in the pit lane. We've got enough data now to make a prediction, Bruce, of 22 laps. So 8 laps to go from here. Now, I have a suspicion that we're on the cusp of 22 or 23 here, so another 7-lap stint is not going to be enough for those guys who have just stopped. That will not be their last stop. But then again, Scott Michaels, Markovits, and the 3rd place car, they can't get to the end either from here. So everybody, I reckon, has a stop to make in that top tranche of runners.
It's great. The opening rounds of this championship, John, we had pretty much a standard format, 7 laps, 7 laps, etc., etc. But this time around, we had people after 4 laps coming in, 5, 6, and 7. How can you have that much scope? But I think what we're looking at is a really strong run from Walkenhorst. But my money's still on the Vodafone Get Speed Mercedes runner. Top 4 cars covered by just over 4 seconds, but Aloma is the one who's likely to make the moves. In fact, he was a second a bit quicker than his rivals last time around. So you could say that Scott Michaels and Marcel Markovits are on borrowed time. Markovits has done all the running so far. And he's listed as having 2 teammates, new face Yves Volter and Michael Brautigam, who we've seen before, but who's a journalist, actually, very successful racing journalist in the sim world. But you'd have to say that Alexei Aloma, we know what he can do. He's shown it in the first 2 hours of this race, and he's only 4 and a bit seconds off the race lead. He's sitting very pretty, John.
Well, I still can't work out who's actually got the advantage here. I suppose you'd say whoever makes the shortest laps pit stop. You know, that we've seen, haven't we, just how much difference, Bruce, it can make depending on how much fuel you have to put into the car, because that is an absolute. Everybody, if you put fuel in the car, has got to put tyres on. Whether you've got a 4-lap stint or a 1-lap stint, you're still going to have to spend 28 seconds or so putting tyres on. Your pit lane delta, the transit time down the pit lane, doesn't change depending on how much work you do. What you've got to be careful of is that you don't by accident put too much fuel in, and that you do have control over. You don't have to put a full tank in every time, and whilst the tyres are going on, you get a little bit of damage repair done automatically. But again, make sure that you haven't got fix-all damage on it, otherwise you could be sitting there for minutes.
Talking of damage again, John, just looking at the nose of Jack Sedgwick's HTP Mercedes, you can see that bonnet on the yellow Mercedes just jacked up a little bit, only a small amount. We've seen far worse in previous events. That might not be enough to trouble him, but it could be a little factor on that long run from Duttinger up that lengthy straight, the one real straight on the circuit here. He's trying his best to catch Kai Kashuba, who's just come out for the team BMW bank car. This is a car that was running different tactics to the others. Ran a shorter first stint, is going to have to do the longer latter stints. But here we are. We have just over 1 hour remaining in this sprint race. It's closing up. But, well, let's see. Top cars by, well, nothing. 3 3/4 seconds. So it is closing. But the important thing, I think, is Alexia Loma getting closer and closer to the lead of the race all over again.
If you look at effectively how much time you lose by pitting, it's between, depending on how much fuel you put in, because again, you can't stop and put fuel in without putting 4 tyres on. That's the regs. It's somewhere between 38 to a minute, 38 seconds to a minute, depending on how much fuel you put in there. Probably a little bit more, 40 seconds to a minute. If you go a minute from the leader, that takes you down to 9th position. So in terms of a pit stop gap, now obviously you're not going to get a full pit stop gap because I don't think anybody can go to the end. I'm just having a quick look at the strategy at the moment. Anybody who stops...
they've also 2 pit stops, John. They can't go to the end.
No, exactly.
You'd have to do 777. No, you'd have to do 778, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd have to do 2 7s and an 8.
And John, also on top of that, was Alexia Loma, one of only 3 of the top runners that did a 7-lap opening stint.
Yeah, correct. Gil Branson, I think, did a 7 as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was running. He was promoted to 2nd place and had been 2nd in the very early laps of the race. Fell back to about 5th or 6th, up to 2nd. But where's his car? It's down in 8th place at the moment. 53 seconds off the lead. But Jack Sedgwick is in 5th. A moment ago we had 10 and a bit seconds covering the top 5, so it's good.
Yeah, I like it. Sammy Matty Trogan was another one who he started from the pit lane, of course. He did a 7-lap stint. Alex Arana, did a short stint, did one of those 2-lap stints that we've seen them do before. Then he did 5, and now Sammy Matty's back in the car. I've got a feeling they should have done one more lap before Sammy got into the car, then they would have done their last pit stop, but I think they're going to be a lap short here. Also just done a pit stop was the Adrenaline, and they've done their 2 driver changes. Gilbranson and Bertolotti, yes, Gilbranson's back in that car, so they've done their 2 driver changes. Team BMW Bank has got Kai Kashuba behind that, so they've had 3 drivers, so that's 2 driver changes, perfect. Spengler, Niels Koch, and now Kai Kashuba, so they're okay there. Scott Michaels is in, so they needed to change drivers before the end of the race. So Scott has done a, what did he do? Did he do a 6 or a 5 lapper, I reckon? And he's now
on his 2nd stint.
Yeah, he's on his 2nd stint, so he needs to swap out and get somebody else in to the end of that race. Now what they could do if they're clever, Bruce, is go maybe 1 or 2 more laps with Scott and then make their last pit stop and do a 6 or a 7 to get to the end of the race. Still predicting here. Oh, the cusp has gone the other way, and the teams will know this. They use strategy software as we do here in the Global Broadcast Centre. Now predicting with 57 minutes to go, 21 lap race.
21 swung the other way.
It swung the other way. 21 lap race.
Well, that really is interesting, and I must say, for Get Speed Performance, with that long 7-lap opening stint, means their latter stints can be shorter than their rivals, which is good news for them. Just wanted to check whether another team is running just the 1 driver. It appears the Race Union Audi team down in 9th place have nobody else but Marvin Otterback, so he's going to have to do a drive-through penalty at some point. It's already been served for a similar offence, if you will, for Alexia Loma, but his car's rather better placed. That's in 3rd place, having served that drive-through. Top 3 covered by 2.2 seconds over the start-finish line. It's Scott Michaels, and in the same shot, the bright yellowy green Schnitzelarm Mercedes, Marcel Markovic and Alexia Loma. Almost impossible to see the Get Speed Performance Mercedes under his rear wing, so it's BMW leading the way from a pair of Mercedes. 2.1 seconds now, first through to third place. Cracking stuff.
And this is where it's, it is unraveling now. It's like when you watch a 4x400 meter relay and everybody starts in their lanes with a stagger. And I always remember David Coleman, the brilliant athletics and football commentator. At the halfway around the second lap, the stagger starts to unwind and you start to see things, and then they break for the last couple of laps and they're all on the inside. Well, what we're in now, we're seeing the tactics unwind, Bruce, as we now get to where almost everybody has another stop, but how close it is, it's gone back up to 22 laps again at the moment. So this is all going to be about the pace at the front of the field. I thought we were on the cusp between 22 and 23. It appears we're on the cusp between 22 and 21 lap race. That would make it one of the shorter races that we've seen, but in this heat you can understand why the pace hasn't been there throughout these 6-7 lap stints, and nobody's gone for an 8-lap stint.
No, but it must be said, what we've seen very clearly last round 2 weekends ago and now is once the track temperature goes over probably the mid-30s, in both races it's been over 40 degrees, tyre wear is it really falls away. They don't have the options they had before, and that's making it all the more interesting that Get Speed Performance managed to do that 7-lap opening stint. It really gives them a helping hand. The latter stage of the race, they can afford to do a stint that's a lap shorter than their rivals. And in terms of tyre life, I think that's going to be massive. But right now, Aloma has got to get ahead into second place of Marcel Marchevitz to make his life easier. I'm sure he can still go on to win from where he is. Scott Michaels isn't pulling away in the lead of the race. He's just under 2 seconds clear of Walkenhorst in his BMW. But in terms of just keeping things safe, and don't forget, Alexei Aloma was nearly taken out by a spinning car, about 3 laps ago, John?
Yes.
Things can happen. You've got to eliminate, in the nicest way possible, as many of these variables as you can. Right now, I think Aloma, for his peace of mind, needs to get past Marchevitz. But this is the best race we've seen from Marchevitz. Really strong for Schnitzel.
Yeah, still just a little over 53 minutes to go, and the strategy software working overtime at the moment. I'll keep an eye on that. Remember, the white flag comes out when the clock hits 0. And we say this on every one of these races, Bruce, but this one could be so important, particularly if you're one of the teams that have done at that point 2 7s and are halfway round your 7th lap in your 3rd stint. If the white flag, if the clock goes down to 0 and the white flag therefore comes out, you'll get the checker when you come to the line.
I'll tell you what though, John, if I was halfway round my 7th lap in the 3rd stint and the team hadn't let me know which way it was going, I'd be very cross with them, because by that stage even I would have worked out what's happening at the front of the race, how many laps it's going to go to. Just one thing I want to flag up, Kai Kashuba, 3rd driver in the Team BMW Bank entry that was started by Bruno Spengler, some really quick laps from Niels Koch, setting the fastest lap of the race, is really catching those in front. Top 4 cars covered by 5 and a bit seconds now. So Scott Michaels leading that Walkenhorst BMW. Little gap back, in fact it's gone out 3 seconds.
Oh, side by side for 3rd.
Yep, 2nd and 3rd really close, but catching both. Kai Kashuba 2 seconds down on that battle for 2nd place. It's getting tighter and tighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that was the Get Speed car that was side by side, not 3rd and 4th. You were talking about the battle that is further up the road, just a couple of seconds between those two at the moment. The BMW of Kai Kashuba and Marcel Marchevitz. The Get Speed car is ahead of that. There he is. Then look at the draft. Marchevitz goes through. It was side by side for 2nd and 3rd, not 3rd and 4th. And heading up the hill, that is a very powerful manoeuvre there, up through close to Tal, from Mulkurve up that hill. That is really positive driving That's a power move. That's a power
That's
move.
what we call commitment with a capital K. It was just that was it needed both of them to be complicit in that, and you had to respect them because the positions had been reversed and then were reversed and they were reversed again. And then there's traffic up ahead, side by side they go all over again.
It started off with a great move from the get-speed car, Alexei Aloma. There was a slight mistake by Marcel as he came out over the bridge and he put his wheels on the grass coming up the hill from over the bridge, which allowed, by the time that they got to Bergwerk, the red Mercedes ahead. So Bergwerk, it's all climbing up the hill, super quick up here. You want to put as little lock in as you can through Kesselchen and up towards the Mühl curve and then Klostertal. And the second of those cars, the Grello Mercedes, as we've been calling it, just getting the draft and going through. That is what I like to call racing room, being asked for and giving. That's really respectful driving, that from both there, Bruce.
It's one of the best moves we've seen. This is the 6th round of the championship. We've covered rounds 2 to 6, and that was two drivers who are now completely comfortable with racing in this championship. But these are two regular sim racers, just got to be stressed. They've been doing it for far longer than the pro racers around them. And I think that's why particularly Team GetSpeed more than comfortable having Alexei Aloma do the whole race. Running second, third place, whisker down on Marcel Marchewitz and the Schnitzelan Mercedes. But you have to say, they've also served a drive-through penalty. That's how good we get.
Yeah, good point.
And they're working the traffic very, very positively. But if there's a slip-up, in fact, Kai Kashuba got close to their tail, but now is 2 seconds back. But it's only 4.4 seconds first to Scott Michaels and his BMW back to Kai Kashuba in his BMW. It's getting tighter and tighter. Jack Sedgwick set some good laps early on. He's not quite able to with them. He's 11 seconds now. So yeah, 11 seconds, the top 5. Not too bad.
It's Bruce Jones, side by side again. This battle for second and third. Alexei Alona just gets the nose of the red GetSpeed car ahead. He's got the left-hand kink coming, and there's traffic as well. Might be able to use that as a bit of a pick. Oh no, I think Marcel got a little bit of a draft from the slower car ahead, and he eases back into the lead as they get to Bilstein and the crossover bridge. Now down through the hill. Watch for the red lights, the brake lights coming on from the car ahead. Still flat, and only now braking as they head into the middle part of that wonderful end to the race lap here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife onto the Grand Prix track. More traffic ahead of them.
That's the race leader. That's Scott Michaels, the traffic you saw.
Is it really? That's the BMW, is it? Yes, it is. Only 0.2 ahead. I didn't quite pick up the fact that was the Valkenhorst car. So has Scott had a slightly slower lap?
Oh, no, you're talking tenths of a second. What happened was the mistake early in the lap where Marcel Marchewitz and Alexei Aloma changed positions before it changed back again, which allowed Scott to get 3 seconds clear, but he only lost a second to them on that lap. He's not fallen off the cliff yet.
Well, Christian Cronjes has to get back into that car, or another driver has to get back into that car. Scott has done a 2 6-lap stints now, hasn't he? Or a 6 and a 5.
They came in on lap 5, and we're on lap, waiting for Sam Michaels to take over. Sam and Scott paired together as ever.
It's gone back up to 22. Gone back up to 22 laps predicted. But that will change, of course, as these leading cars take a stop, if they need to take a stop. That car, the BMW that we're talking about, Bruce, that has to take a stop because it can't get to the end, whether it's 21 or 22 laps. And it also needs to put another driver in it. So that has no choice. There will be another stop for the Valkenhorst BMW number 34. I'm looking at Alexei. I think he might. No, I don't think he can get to the end. Alexei can't get to the end, so Alexei's got to stop as well. The first car that has the chance of getting to the end is Jack Sedgwick, and now I think I reckon that the 107 Team BMW Bank, they've done 7 laps.
Kai Kashuba.
Yes, Kai Kashuba is the first car, I reckon, if we only go to 21 laps, that can get to the end. Kai Kashuba, and if he's on if he's on fuel save from the moment he got in that car 2 laps ago, then he might even edge 8 laps out of that if he's trying
John,
to eke the life out of his tyres.
Just remember, Alexia Loma has made his 3 pit stops, but he did a 7-lap stint, another 7-lap stint. He can do it if it's only 21 laps.
He did.
Or did he do a 7 and a 6? I think it was 7 and 7.
Oh, hang on. He did a 7, and then he came in for his drive-through.
So that's what's confusing. No.
Yes.
Get Speed Performance are in the driving seat. They're also just 1.3 seconds off of the lead of the race outright. So they had that really good opening stint by Alexia Loma, who handed over to Alexia Loma, and Alexia Loma took over the 3rd stint. So they've kept it consistent.
Yeah, but I reckon he was in at the. He did that 1-lap stint between 11 and 12, so I don't think he can go to the end, Bruce.
Was it not between 12 and 13? But actually, even so, that should leave.
Yeah, that still leaves him 1 lap short. Yeah. I know that.
Stand by in the pits. Stand by in the pits. It's going to get busy.
I know that Connery's listening. Can you give us the stint length on the number 2 Vodafone car on the graphic, please? We're getting ourselves a little bit confused about his drive-through and his pit stop, and he'll have the absolute on that. That's the number 2 Vodafone, what the stint length is at the moment.
I'm sure he will, John. I have this image of Connery as like an octopus at the controls. So many things he needs to bring up for us to look at, and just does a masterful job. So wait and see what Connery can provide. But what I can tell you, first back to 3rd place, which is Scott Michaels via Aloma to Marchevich. It's under 3 seconds now, under 5 seconds, all in for the top 4 for Kai Kashuba. Under 11 seconds still back to 5th. So it's staying fairly even, but the pace at the moment is with Aloma, I feel, in 2nd place. Actually, the fastest stop back was what in 4th place, Kai Kashuba last time round, did an 8-minute 1 second lap. But then catching one thing, John, in getting past is quite another, as you've seen around the track.
It's going to be tight either way. It is going to be tight either way. It's back up to 22 laps, or it remains at 22 laps with just under 44 minutes still to go. Bruce Jones and John
looking down the classes, John, and Martin Asher just dived in from the lead, said that many times this year, of the Porsche Cup cars. So they're all starting to make their final
stops. Good point.
Well.
Yeah, and remember, they're actually, is he still on the overall lead lap? Yes, he is. That's really good pace from the Porsches today. The GT3 seem to be the ones who've been suffering with the heat. 13th position as Asher Racing's Martin Asher comes in from the lead of that, and he's only 5 minutes down on the leader, which of course is not a full lap here by some margin. So he's 2/3 of a lap down. Oh, mistake in the carousel by the Alexia Loma driven Vodafone Team Get Speed car. I wonder if he's getting a bit tired now. He's been behind the wheel for over 2 hours. And he just slipped out. He went into the Caracciolo carousel just a tad too quickly. The car popped out on the top, and it's super slippy there in real life as well as in the simulation. There's leaves, there's dirt, there's gunk, there's all kinds of tyre debris that gets thrown up there, and there's simply no grip. And he did a very good job actually in not hitting the wall. And that would have been disaster. He's been out there on those tyres for 4 or 5 laps. So coming to the bottom of the hill of the Stahlstrecke, where the old test hill runs up there. As he comes up the hill, he aimed at the end of the advertising hoarding and drop in. He's just a little bit too quick. The car pops out, terminal understeer there, but he recovers very, very quickly and almost actually pulls on to what was at that point 2nd position. He's dropped back to 3rd now. Horrible thing to have happen, but a great recovery by Alexi Aloma. That's why he's one of the best in the business. Bruce Jones.
Well, a great save. So it's yellow ahead of red. It had been red ahead of yellow. Don't forget, Marcel Marchevich made a mistake 1, possibly 2 laps ago. Then we had the brilliant manoeuvre to get back round again, and they're having a fantastic scrap. But this is all meat and drink to Scott Michaels leading in the Walker Horse BMW. The gap was down to 1.5 seconds over Iloma. It's now 2.1 seconds over Marcel Marcevic, and Iloma for Get Speed is going to have to do it all over again. Maybe, in fact, he'll fall prey to the attacking Kai Kashuba in 4th place, who's been taking chunks out of the leading 3 cars. Now we've got 4 of them all on the Dottinger Hoa, but it's still the BMW in front. 2.4 seconds to good for Scott Michaels. But who is going to blink first? Who is going to come in and make the final pit stop?
Kai Kashuba's got the fastest lap of the race now, at least that car has. 8 minutes, 0.5. We haven't had a sub 8 minute lap yet. That tells you about the conditions, because we normally would expect, Bruce, to see in the course of a race a sub 8 minute lap, and we haven't had it today. 8 minutes pretty much exactly for Kai Kashuba. I don't think he's saving fuel, so he will be 1 lap short.
Race leader in.
Now this will be the last pit stop, and there should be,
they're all in.
There should be a driver change for these cars as they come in now. Well, here's a thing as well. I've had Markovic driving since the start of the race. So they are not
having 2 teammates, but
well, is he driving the full race on his own then? Because if he's not, they haven't done
this weekend.
So he'll have to do a drive-through. I haven't seen Markovic doing a drive-through. This is very interesting. So we'll see. Well, Sam Michael's already aboard the Valkenhorst 34. So that's correct, and that car can go at the end. Markovic is staying in. So the Schnitzelarm Racing could be doing a 1-man band again. Valkenhorst 35 in. Ben Tuck and Kevin Volk also coming in for Phoenix. So Kashuba goes through into the lead in the Team BMW Bank 107. Now remember, that car has been doing 7-lap stints. Now, can he pace himself to the end to either do an 8-lap stint or to do a time that will allow the race to run out when he's on his race time to run out when he's on his 21st lap rather than going into the 22nd. If he can do that, Bruce, he's got the race won. Sedgwick behind him can't go to the end. Sedgwick can't go to the end.
Heading out for that 8th lap would be a voyage into the unknown. It might be one thing earlier in the championship when the conditions were cooler, but if you've got it wrong, partway around the lap, your tyres are literally falling off the car. You could go tumbling out of the top half dozen, I would reckon. You might be the race leader at the start of the lap, but maybe 8 laps is too far. Maybe I'm wrong. Drivers will be looking at tyre wear. They'll be analysing everything they possibly can. Their co-drivers, the drivers who just got out of the car, will be keeping them informed as best they can. And this is where a sim racer experience is going to be absolutely vital.
Kashuba at the moment, if we look down the top 10, and this is why I love endurance racing, and I love it particularly at the Nürburgring Nordschleife because of the length of the lap. You really, it's difficult to eke out an extra lap. We'll get to the battle in second and third in the SP10, the GT4 category. Look down the top 10, Bruce, and if you accept that the guys that Kashuba are racing, who have just done quote-unquote their last stops, are going to be the Valkenhorst car of Sam Michaels. He's got 1 minute and 20 seconds on that car at the moment. So that's a pit stop. He can, depending on how much fuel he has to put in, and if he's only 1 lap shy, if he comes in with 2 or 3 laps to go, puts a new set of tyres on and a splash of fuel to get him for the extra lap that he needs that he hasn't got in the tank right now, then he might just be there or thereabouts. That Team BMW Bank number 107 might be in with a chance of the win here.
Well, they know what it takes to win. The last 3 rounds have been a third, a first and a second place for them. Yes, there have been a couple of moments there, like the winning car last time out being disqualified, but 3 podium results in the championship as tight and as competitive as this shows they really do know their stuff. But it's worth reiterating yet again, if I will, that the difference is now that we're having high track temperatures. It really has required the teams to think on their toes. And BMW Bank, they were slow burners, but every stint their drivers have been quick. The fastest lap of the race was set by their car, with Niels Koch doing that middle hour of the race, middle of the 3. But Kai Kashuba has just been putting in metronomically good laps, also Metra lap, they're similar to each other, but quicker than all of those around them. So certainly this is a good moment in the race for Kai Kashuba, but really it's what's going to happen. Well, I'd say the next 5 or 6 minutes that defines what happens in this race.
Yeah, agreed. And the battles down the field for podium positions as well still on. Zorg Rennsport's Christian Berg, Tom Valentini, who's been a real star in this DNLS this year. In fact, both of these guys have. We've mentioned their names a lot. We're used to seeing these guys at the sharp end of what was Cup 3, what is now SP10 as a combined GT4 field, with the addition for the first time in this series this weekend of the BMW M4 GT4. But the Porsche is still in the top 4 positions in that category. Sindre Setsas has just come into the pits, so Matti Sipala will take over the core car. So Christian Berg and Tom Valentini may well be battling for something close to the lead, because they were only 1 minute 65 seconds behind. Now this is an interesting battle, Bruce, out on the Nordschleife at the moment, heading down towards the bridge at Adana. It's the Get Speed and Schnitzelarm racing car 7th and 6th, but this potentially could be for a podium position, and even with the BMW number 34 ahead of them, with Sam Michaels behind the wheel, this actually is almost a 3-car battle for the lead, isn't it?
Absolutely so, John. So for Sam Michaels, that's worked very nicely. Took over from Scott Michaels, and again, it's really situation as it was before, the 3 cars covered by 2 and a bit seconds, 3 seconds. But for Marcel Marshevitz, who seems to be doing a solo run, are we not still waiting that drive-through penalty? I believe we are. He's not. Hold on a second, let's scroll across my screen. They've done the 3rd pit stop, but that wasn't a drive-through.
No.
I think, unfortunately for Schnitzelarm, much as they've been fantastic on the track, the hard work's been done by the car behind, because that also needed a drive-through, and it was
correct
a while ago during that 2nd stint.
Yeah, I agree, Bruce, with that. If he is driving solo, there is a drive-through penalty to be served. Well, first of all, you've got to advise the organisers that it's a solo drive, and at that point, sometime during the race, you have to take a drive-through penalty. At the Caracciola Carousel, traffic ahead. Oh, it's the lead! The leader goes wide! Leader goes up out of the carousel early, and that's really slowed down the BMW. And the top 3 are absolutely together as they go past one of the Audi TCRs. And now heading out of the carousel and up towards Hohe Acht. This is a 3-car, 12-wheel train for the lead of the motor race, with just over half an hour to go. We reckon that the Schnitzelarm car has a drive-through if Marcel is driving on his own. If he's not driving on his own, they're way out of it, because they've got to make 2 driver changes. You must make 2 driver changes, and they've made none right now. Go ahead.
I was going to say, John, on top of that, he's served more than 2 hours in the car, so he'll get another penalty for that.
Well, that's disqual. That would be disqual. So he must be driving on his own, Bruce. So he's going to have to do... Yeah, it's a very good point, well remembered. He's going to have to do a drive-through. He must be driving on his own. This is, however, still intriguing. And I wonder how much information then, for 6th, 7th and 8th at the moment, but with certainly... Well, let's have a look. Let's see who's ahead of them. Ahead of them is Gulbrandsen. He can't get to the end from here, although they have done their 2 driver changes. He'll have to make, I reckon, 1 more. Can he get to the end? He stopped on 14. Gulbrandsen might be able to get to the end. But it'll be a supreme effort, and it has to be a 21-lap race. Otterbach currently scored in 3rd for Race Union, can't get to the end. He's another driver.
He needs to drive through as well, John.
I was about to say
solo.
Correct, he's raced solo. Sedgwick is coming to the end of his stint, and Marvin Dienst will have to get back into that car at the end of this stint. Kai Kashuba could be going to the end, but even if he's not going on anybody else, but what's he got on? Otterbach's got to do a drive-through. and another pit stop for fuel. So what's he got on the 88? Can the 88, let's see as they go through, Kashuba goes on to lap 18 of what we think at the moment, the computer is telling us, at the moment, it's 22 laps. So at the moment, it's this one and 4 more at the end of this long lap. So Otterbach is 1 minute and 7 behind the leader. So Otterbach has got 1 stop to do with a drive-through. What is Kenneth Gulbranson? 1 minute behind the leader, but he's going to be on fumes at the end as well. This is really interesting, really interesting.
It is, because Kai Kashuba has never really been that close to the leaders, but he's lapped faster than anybody else the last 4 or 5 laps. That is why he's putting clear of Jack Sedgwick. 7.5 seconds between them, but surely still that final pit stop to come.
So Schnitzelheim did get past Sam Michaels, so that's Markovic in 4th, but he's got a drive-through. So the first car that we are absolutely 100%, I'll put the house on it only if the responsible adult would let me, which he never would, I reckon is Sam Michaels, the Valkenhorst Motorsport car, and then Alexei Aloma right behind him. Those guys can go to the end for sure, whether it's 21 or 22 laps. But they're 1 minute and 20 plus seconds behind. Kashuba can get in for his splash and go and get out ahead of them. He can get out ahead of them. This might be brilliant tactics by the 107 team, and we've seen the Team BMW Bank guys pull these kinds of tactics in the past. By the way, a quick word, Bruce, for the car that started from the pit lane. Sammy Matty-Trogan back in that car to take it to the end. The 186 Marla Racing championship leading team up into 9th position. And Sammy, well, if it's 21 laps, he can go at the end. If not, he'll need a splash. But most of the people behind him are in the same position. So I don't think he's going to be any worse than 9th position.
No, he's got 2 of the drivers ahead of him, Marcel Markovic in 4th place and Marvin Otterbach, who's immediately ahead of him in 8th place to serve drive-through penalties. That means I think he'll get ahead of Otterbach, but it's all about just trying to get a few more points, because of course leading the championship, just desperate for everything they can gain.
Well, this is another cracker, Bruce, just another crack. We're getting used to this now. We're being spoiled. We've had 5 races. We've commentated on 4 of them. They've all had, a huge run for the Vodafone cars. It gets the Valkenhorst car got caught up behind the number 456 Audi, and the light blue, black and tangerine car of Race Tech Performance unwittingly playing a part in this battle, this crucial battle. There's a touch at the top of the foxhole there at Arnberg, but a great save by Michaels, and in fairness, Marcel Markovic backed out straight away. He didn't put the foot down and spin the BMW ahead of him. Very close racing indeed, and remember, there's inherent latency in these sims. You hear the pros and those that know talking about net code incidents where it's very difficult to judge exactly how close you are. Bit of latency in what you're seeing and the control inputs that you're putting in, maybe a 1/10 or a 1/10.5 a second. That's a lot of ground that you're covering. So at Arnberg, then at the top of the hill, they came past the Audi. That's all fine, dragging up towards the insanely quick left-hander at Schwedenkreuz, the Swedish cross. Now, was there a touch, or did Sam lose it on the downshift? Close, not sure, but it was great driving by Alexei Aloma. He certainly didn't add, if there was a little touch, he certainly didn't add to it, Bruce, and he backed out of it straight away. If there was just a slide, he didn't make the slide worse. Great driving from both.
Really good. It's almost as though he had to predict what he was going to do before it had actually happened. But don't forget that Alexei Aloma had a car spin right in front of him when he was leading the race about 5 or 6 laps ago. So he's wary that a small incident by someone else could cost him his race. And right now, forget speed performance. He's just desperate to get up onto that podium and give their championship a bit of a shove. They haven't been on the podium yet, even with the likes of Philip Noller, Philip Ellis, Raffaele Marcello on board. Their best result a 4th place so far, running in 6th, but they will scroll their way forward. Will they get a podium? Let's see, because at the moment, Kai Kashuba leading by 9 seconds from Jack Sedgwick. It's looking very, very strong indeed for Team BMW Bank. The sleepers who've just done everything right thus far.
Oh, this has been brilliant to watch. Absolutely brilliant to watch. And still, we don't really know. We're having to make supposition. And again, side by side up the hill. And again, the Get Speed car has the speed. And there's a position changed. Magnificent, magnificent driving from everybody concerned. As just great to watch. Fortunately, no traffic around this time. So again, through the carousel, see, we've skipped ahead, haven't we, to BMW that is leading at the moment, the Kai Kashuba machine. So that was, again, that position was made up on the run out of Bergwerk through Kesselchen and Mulkurve and Klostertal, all of that sort of area, which is absolutely flat in 6th. There's one downshift, and then you're back up into 6th again. It's tremendous driving. Here's Kai Kashuba on the Dottinger Hohe. Now, if this is you, Bruce, and you're leading the race, and you know that the next car that even has half a chance of going to the end of the race is Kenneth Gulbrandsen, and he's a minute back, and really anyone who surely does have a chance is nearly a minute 30 back, and that's the Vodafone Alexei Aloma car. I think you've got to come in and give yourself a chance, haven't you, to get some use out of a new set of tyres, because as soon as you put the fuel hose on, you're going to have to do. I think they're coming in this time around. He's coming in. He's going to do a splash. So it'll be 4 new tyres and literally 1 lap of fuel.
Okay, for me, it means Get Speed almost have to go for that 8th lap on this final set of tyres rather than the 7th, because they've been held up in traffic fighting with Marcel Marchevitz. Alexei Aloma, he's going to be tired. He's done the whole race so far, as has Marchevitz. Marchevitz will have to serve a penalty. Jack Sedgwick in from 2nd place. So you talked of Kenneth Gulbrandsen. He should assume the lead of the race in the WRT Audi. That's WRT1. But
unless he does the same thing, because he's on the ragged edge as well. He would have to do an 8 lap to get it to the end here. Alexei Alomas, he's fine. He pitted at 17. Remember, he pitted at 17 along with the Valkenhorst car and the Snitchelam car. So they've made their last pit stops. So, and they can go to the end, but they are, a minute and a half back from the first car that came into the pits there. So does Gulbrandsen, does he take the same tactical stop? No, he's going
not.
through.
I beg your pardon. Body angle was such. No, he's staying on, but he has been running a different sort of sequence. What's his lap pace like? Oh, 8 minutes 7. They're falling away.
I think he's saving fuel. Fuel. So Gulbrandsen goes into the lead. He did 7. He's probably going to have to do 8 at the end. I think he's saving fuel. We've still got a 22 lap prediction here as it stands at the moment.
Kashuba's got about a 6-second lead having come out of the pits, because Marchevitz, who has to make a drive-through penalty in Aloma, just crossing the start-finish line. In the background, Sam Michaels, 2 seconds behind them, but already the Team BMW BMW pulling away through the Grand Prix loop, looking to see how far he is visually. It's about, maybe slightly less than 6 seconds, because of course he was coming slowly out of the pits, whereas those Mercedes of Marchevitz and Aloma flat out down the start of the straight.
Well,
exciting sector.
So at the moment, it's advantage, I think. Well, okay, let's give you what we got. 22 minutes to go. All right, let's give you what we think is going on at the moment. Gulbrandsen will have to do an 8 lap stint to get to the end, because he can't slow down enough to make it a 21 lap race. Reason? Kai Kashuba in the Team BMW Bank 107 is less than 7 seconds behind him, has a brand new set of rubber, and is fueled for a 22 lap race, so he can drive full bore all the way to the end. 3rd place, Snitchelam, we reckon still has to do a drive-through, so he's going to be out of it. Vodafone Team Get Speed, Manfilter HTP Winward, who had just been taken over by Marvin Dings. They've done all their driver changes, and those two cars, along with Falcon Horse Sam Michaels, they can all go to the end. So the gap between Kenneth Gulbranson, Kai Kashuba is 6.3 seconds, with Gulbranson on a massive fuel save. I don't think he's going to be able to do it, but he might try it. So if you assume that he's got to stop again, Kashuba is the actual leader when it all works out on corrected pit stops. He's got 22 seconds on the Schnitzelam car, which has to do with drive-through as far as we're aware. So then what's he got? He's got, it's just still 23 seconds on a Lomas. So that's the gap. And then the Man Filter car is in probably a net third, with the Falcon Horse BMW in net fourth. Am I reading that right, Bruce?
You are, but what you need to know is effectively Kai Kashuba is leading the race, and then Eloma, Dienst and Michaels are covered by, let's call it a second and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that.
We will shed Gulbranson unless he really is going for something super, super bold.
He's been caught. The race, but he's been caught hand over fist. He's not going to win. I wonder who he's timing himself back to. The problem is that if you accept that the Vodafone Team Get Speed car is the next car back that could go, the BMW Bank Kai Kashuba car will pass him on this pace. He's only got 18 seconds between himself. He's got 23 seconds between himself and the Vodafone car. And I'm not sure that even saving 23 seconds over the next 3.5 laps is going to be enough for him to get the extra lap in.
So many ways, as they used to say, to skin a cat.
It's been brilliant. The one thing that we have, we're going to have to remember this when we get back to the real world. Oh, huge dive down the inside by Marvin Dingst in that battle between the Get Speed car and the Man Filter Team HTP. Just didn't manage to get through. The Schnitzelam car actually working against the Get Speed car of Alexei Eloma, who, remember, has been driving the whole of this race. They're heading down the hill now to the hairpin before the bridge at Adana. That was a very bold manoeuvre indeed at Callenhard. We're back up the hill, and still that little damage. Looks like it's getting a little bit worse on the right front of the AMG GT3. What we're going to have to remember, Bruce, when we get back to real world racing, and particularly when you get, into the NLS, is we don't have slow zones and code 60s here in this. So this is flat out from start to finish. There is really no respite at all for the drivers.
100%, John. I wonder how many drivers who are going to compete in the NLS are just watching this and learning as they go the different tactics. Yes, they'll be sitting at home in their darkened rooms, looking at the screens, looking at the timing screens, the main image monitor. They'll be learning from this, but it's so intriguing. What has really struck me in these past few months of 2020 is how much one can learn from sim racing. I'd have been quite snooty about it, say, well, it's only an adjunct to this, but it's very much part of real racing now, and I've been enthralled by this. What I'm aware of this race is that Marcel Marx has been so dogged in that Schnitzelam that I think really cost the Get Speed team. I said about 5 laps ago that Eloma had to get past Martin. She is the quicker of the two drivers, but they've both made mistakes, and at the moment he's the meat in a 3-car Mercedes sandwich. It's Marshevitz in second place, Eloma in the middle, and Marvin Dienst not so far behind in the Man Filter car. So pretty much as they were on the opening lap, the Schlitz and Man Filter car, but the car that was pulling away on that opening lap, don't forget, looked totally in control, is the driver in the middle, Alexei Eloma. So the race has not gone so well for him in the second half. It's really been much of a struggle.
No, it hasn't. We'll keep our eyes on that battle going on as I give you a rundown of some of the other positions. Claudius Veed for SimRC has 6 seconds on Martin Asher. They're 13th and 14th position overall, and still on the lead lap. Only half a lap down on the leaders. That's been a really, really fast run from the 911 Cup cars. So 276 from 227, and then about a minute and 50 further back in third, it's Colin Dunker for the Violent Racing machine, and he's got 18 seconds on fourth. as far as the SP10s, it's still the top 4 are the Porsches. Matti Sippala for Corsim Racing has half a minute on Zorg Rennsport. Christian Bug in second, and he's pulled out now 4 seconds on Tom Valentini. We were watching that battle earlier on. Niels Carstensen is the team RSO 397 in 4th position. Best of the BMWs is Lucas Müller, who has a bit of time on Christian Frank and Tobias Berker, who make up the rest of the top 7. And in the SP3T category, before we get on to the Dottinger Hall for this great battle that we're keeping an eye on, it's Sven Glasel from Team Heusingveld, who has about a half a minute lead to Kimmo Suominen in Core Racing's number 403 Audi. Then Felix Luding, who has led the race for Sim RC. He's another 21 seconds further back, and just 2 seconds ahead of the Leipert Esports racing car. Sandro Petroziello is in the 453 car. That's how it stands in the classes with 15 minutes to go. But this Schnitzelarm Racing led train of cars as through goes Alexei. He gets the drag, he's nosed ahead, he's on the left hand side under Bilstein. He'll get the run, and here comes Marvin Dingst. He's picked the inside of the track. Is that going to work for him, or will there be a coming together? Well, Getspray goes through, but Dingst couldn't follow him through. But surely that Schnitzelarm car has got to have a drive through. He might be peeling off now for that. He is not, he's gone through. Wow, great racing again. And you've got to say that Alexei Aloma has been the man for making the power overtakes in this race, Bruce Jones.
Yeah, the master of breaking the toe where possible to go out around. He really has hooked up. He's been very, very bold indeed. And I liked a couple of laps ago when we saw, in fact, Marshevitz duck in behind a lower class car and gain a tiny little bit of a toe. You commented on it at the time, approaching the Bilstein swerve kick, and everything was a bit counted. He stayed ahead on that instant, but this time around, Aloma had just that little bit more drag. Now Jack Sedgwick is getting them. Sorry, Martin Deeds has moved ahead. Well, sorry, all these letters. The Manfilter HTP Mercedes now up ahead of Marchevitz as well. But Kenneth Gulbrandsen leading the race at the moment, but he owes us a pit stop. That Audi for WRT1 will be in the pit soon.
Gulbrandsen has managed to stay ahead, and I have to say, with only 7 seconds of an advantage at the start of that lap, I'm very impressed that that's only been cut to 4 seconds as it stands at the moment. Gulbrandsen, we think, has to stop. We're still predicting 22 laps. He would have to do an 8-lap stint, with nobody has done. So Kai Kashuba is the man at the moment who is doing, potentially leading this race on corrected time. Now we'll find out at the end of this lap, because this is lap 21. This is the 7th lap of the stint for Kenneth Gulbrandsen, and whether he steers to the right.
13 minutes remaining, John. We do another lap.
It's got to be, hasn't it? He can't slow down enough to make it only a 21-lap race with this battle behind him. And we think that, Marchevitz has now dropped down and Marvin Dingst has gone through. So Alexei Alama and Marvin Dingst, they are battling for what might be second and third. It could well be second and third. What an extraordinary finish to the 6th round of the DNLS, the Digital Nürburgring Langstrecken Series, powered by VCO. It is the H&R 3 Stunden, the 3-hour H&R race. Great to see that so many of the real-world sponsors have jumped in to put their names on these races, exactly as they would be doing in real life. And here's this battle for the podium, possibly for second place. There's nothing between them. You couldn't fit a very thin phone book between them at times. Here is Marvin Dingst. He must be able to smell the back of that Vodafone car. He's so close, even with the long nose of that Manfilter HTP Winward Racing. A little bit of damage on the front of that car at the moment, and coming off a victory, remember, although it was Phil Ellis that was paired last time out with Jack Sedgwick. Sedgwick's once again done the middle stint. Marvin Dienst will take it to the end. Oh, this is fantastic stuff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. We haven't seen the HTP car always running in the Man Filters livery in that dark grey with green striping, race stripes on it, and in fact that's how it's running in the real world this weekend down at Portimao. And we'll be going ad-free for those of you watching to the end. Can't break away from this. Thanks, Michael, for letting us know that. So we will take you the next 11 minutes with no breaks for those of you watching on the live stream. Obviously we never break away on the audio stream, but there are a few partners that our colleagues at Nürburgring TV and racesport.tv need to look after. Well, they've been consulted and they've said, stick with the racing. That's great, isn't it? Great stuff. So here's this battle then for second and third and fourth as it is at the moment, but Gulbrandsen at the front of the field, now just 2 seconds ahead, and still with 1 lap to go at the end of this one, and Gulbrandsen's coming to the end of a 7-lap stint. I'll be amazed if he's
about to lose a position, John. His tyres must be absolutely shot because he's really been running wide in a way he wasn't before, and Sam Michael's all over the tail, so one of these big yellow Mercedes about to lose ground. But we've seen before with Aloma all over the tail for lap after lap of Marcel Marcevic. He's not an easy nut to crack, but I think his tyres have gone, so he's falling away. And we still think Marcevic, having driven the entirety of the race to this point with just under 10 minutes to go, owes us a drive-through penalty.
He must be doing it on his own, as Bruce said. He's done over the 2 hours now, so they must have applied for the waiver to him to drive on his own, but that does mean a drive-through, and Alexei Aloma has done that, and he's got that out of the way. The GetSpeed team were letting us know at RSL_studio. The only thing I'm thinking about Gulbrandsen in that Audi, the E-Team WRT1, he's got another 23 seconds back to this battle for what is at the moment third and fourth. Has he saved enough fuel by driving a little bit slower at the front of the field? Has Kennett?
Not in the last lap, John. He just banged in an 8-minute 1 second lap.
Right.
So
well, there's the answer. He's going to stop at the end of this lap.
Hanging around.
Yeah, exactly. I was just wondering if he thought maybe he might not get the win, but he could hold on to a podium. If he stops, I reckon he's going to be behind Sam Michaels by the time he gets back out. So he's probably going to end up in 6th, which will be net 5th. Still decent points. Well, we'll know in a little while when he comes to the end of this lap, and the gap for the lead is only 1.5 seconds. So Kai Kashuba might actually take the lead before Gulbrandsen decides whether or not he's going to pit. They're on the run to the final lap now with 8 minutes. Oh, it's going to be tight, isn't it? Where are the leaders? 8 minutes to go now. The leaders are already on the Dottinger Hohe. They'll be well down the Dottinger Hohe. 7:55. Now, does Gulbrandsen peel into the pits as this battle for what at the moment is third and fourth, and the GetSpeed car goes wide and round the outside. Now, that's interesting. I wonder if that was tactics.
So do I, John. I think he wants to tow up the straight, but
Correct.
He's got to hang in there. Marvin Dienst is starting to pull away from Aloma, but now Aloma's got the tow. I think you're quite right.
I wonder, coming out the Kleiner Carousel, whether Alexei Aloma just gave that position up, knowing that he can drag back and get the position. Meanwhile, behind them, Marcel Marcevic is getting a huge run, and Gulbrandsen has not yet gone through. I'm waiting to see if he starts another lap, and he's pitted.
I was slightly worried that Kai Kashuba would be so close behind, he might be caught out by the swerve.
And the swap back. And whilst we were reporting that, they did swap back. So I'm guessing that was deliberate from Alexei Aloma. So that's now going to be second position. Kai Kashuba goes through. Gulbrandsen is getting a splash of fuel, but of course he has to put tyres on as soon as the fuel hose goes on. And here comes Alexei through into second position. So that makes Dean's third. Marcel Markovic has not stopped for his drive-through. That'll be a disqual, I reckon, so long as the information that we've got is right. So that's going to put Sam Michaels in with a shot of a podium finish here, but he'll have to get by the Schnitzelheim car, which I'm afraid at the moment is a spoiler. Now, I'm only going by the information that we've had on the timing screen, but I can't see anybody other than Markovic in that Schnitzelheim car, and that means he should really have done a drive-through penalty. Gulbranson, by the way, did indeed join behind Sam Michaels, but some 30 seconds behind Sam Michaels. So sixth position, that'll be a net fifth for him.
Yeah, in and out of the pits cost, I think, about 56 seconds. We thought he'd fall to the behind that group. He's ahead of Daniel Longerich, who's driving the number 44 Phoenix Racing entry, the Audi that he's sharing with Kevin Falk. I expected Richard Westbrook to be here, but I don't think he started the race in that one.
Correct. Now, I would expect to see on our screen a message from race control sometime on this last lap about the Schnitzelheim car. Now, the only thing that could possibly save them here is if, and I know this is a possibility because I've seen it in the regs, we might have two drivers sharing one rig and one account, and therefore it might have been showing as Marcel Markovic all the way through, but somebody else could have literally been sitting in the seat. They would have had to have provided evidence for that, and a good reason. But if that's not the case, then somewhere around this last lap, as we saw with Williams Esports, Bruce, I expect to see a message from race control saying applying a penalty, which I think will be a disqual for that Schnitzelheim car.
I think so. We certainly saw it with the race-leading car last time, the race-winning car of Dominic Steib and Sammy Matty Trogan. That wasn't given a time penalty. It was tough luck. You won the race on the track, but one of you exceeded your driver maximum stint length time, so you're out. It's not a penalty, but I think you'll need a better excuse than the dog ate my homework, wouldn't you? I'm afraid that's all Marcel Markovic has as his defence at the moment, as far as we understand. 20-second advantage, 22 seconds, Kai Kashuba over Alexei Aloma. Aloma, though, is busy in the office. He's got Marvin Dietz all over him. Let him pass, dragged him back past him up the Dottinger Hoa, but he's got to do it. Try not to let the reverse happen this time around, and certainly Marvin Dietz is exactly the same. Okay, oh, look, you made a mistake. I'm going to get past, then be passed again on the run to the finish, but really tight. Second, third, fourth and fifth. Aloma, Dietz, Markovic and Michaels. Almost goes to fail.
Well, the time will run out in 3.5 minutes, so this is the last lap, so this is the battle for second position between at least two of those cars. Sam Michaels might feel that he wants to get in there. If he's going to do it, he's got to get past this Schnitzelheim car. We expect that car to be removed from the results, but we've not seen anything yet from that, and I'm looking on the at the moment on the message screen. By the way, last time around, sorry Bruce if you mentioned this, Kai Kashuba did set a new fastest lap of the race, 8 minutes, 0.506. That was the previous lap, 8 minutes, 0.506. So Kai Kashuba has not eased down at all. Bruno Spengler started, did 7 laps for Niels Koch, and then Kai Kashuba jumped in and did a 5-lap stint to take him within shouting distance of the end. New set of tyres, which he's used brilliantly well.
Well, it's quite beguiling, this battle for second place. Aloma still holding off the yellow Mercedes, similar Mercedes of Marvin Dietz, but Team BMW Bank just sitting pretty, 22 seconds to the good, and setting the fastest lap of the race. What more could Kai Kashuba do but to give this team its second win in the last 3 outings?
Oh, side by side again, going up the hill, but this time it's repelled. And Alexei Aloma, remember, who has driven the whole race, he had the penalty of a drive-through that he had to take for bonus points. Team Get Speed. their social media's gone very quiet recently, I expect, because they're biting their nails at the moment watching this. Marvin Dingst with Manfilter Team HTP Winward. Winners last time out with Jack Sedgwick, who did the middle stint here, and Phil Ellis, who's driving for HTP Winward in the real world down in Portugal this weekend. And
could be about to be a change, because Marcel Maršović suddenly had a much better exit of about 3 corners ago. He's right on the tail now of Aloma. This is very, very good. Over Marvin Dietz, this is good news for Aloma. It might just buy him a tiny, tiny margin that should be enough to get onto the Döttinger without a car at his tail. But the brighter yellow Mercedes from HTP recovered from that moment. Dietz now catching up with Aloma all over again. Fantastic.
This is brilliant stuff from everybody concerned, and there will be more traffic before the end of the race. Absolutely no doubt about that.
Just worth pointing out that Alex Serrano is only up to 10th place overall for the Mahler Racing Team. Will pick up as many as he would have liked. He is the championship leader. He's missing his teammate Agustin Canapino, who's away this weekend. But right now, it's all about Mike Schuber and Team BMW.
At the head of the field, Kashuba with a 22-second lead. He'll be picking his way through traffic. He'll be hoping that he can keep his concentration going. But he's already getting towards the Döttinger Hohe as the battle for second, third, fourth and fifth, with Sam Michaels at the back there. The Volkenhorst car comes towards the Kleiner Carousel. Well inside the last third of the race now. The white flag has gone out. Time has expired. But here's the interest. Is there a big enough gap between Alexei Aloma? He's broken away a little bit, but I think Dingst is still close enough to get a good drag if he gets a good exit from the Gallows Hill corner. Immediately starting to move about the Team Get Speed car. That's going to cost him pace. He's putting steering lock in. Meantime, the leader comes to the final set of corners. He hasn't had to make a pass there. He could almost kick in the clutch and coast home from here. Team BMW Bank take their second win of the Digital NLS Nordschleife Langstrecke Series, powered by VCO. Team BMW Bank win it. The 107 car. Spengler, Niels Koch and Kai Kashuba in that order are on the top step of the podium, and second is going to be Get Speed, a single driver. So that meant a drive-through penalty, and it's been overcome by the pace and the great strategy of Alexei Aloma. Marvin Dingst will back up a win last time out for Manfilter Team HTP with a third place on the podium ahead of Markovic finishing for Snitcherland. We're not sure whether that will be allowed to stand, because he, according to us, did not do his drive-through and sat in the car the whole race. We'll wait for confirmation about that. Sam Michaels in fifth. Gulbranson, 1 lap short on his fuel, will finish in 6th position. Very tight on the line for the HTP Manfilter's car and the Snitcherland machine. But I think that decision anyway will go to the Manfilter's car because of what we were talking about. Bruce Jones, once again, another strategy call as we'll wait for the class leaders to come in. And the guys, Claudius Veed will be along in a moment to win for Sim RC Cup. Well, his lead's been cut back to 6 seconds in the Porsche category. In GT4, Matti Sipola has half a minute on Christian Bug, and Tom Valentini's 23 seconds further back. The best of the TCRs, again, that's a 20-second win at the moment, or advantage for Core Sim Racing. Well, Bruce Jones, again, tactics that were shuffled about, and a 22-lap race, not the longest but not the shortest that we've seen here either.
Tactics, I didn't know there could be so many different tactics and different race strategies. I thought we settled down between DNLS 2 and DNLS 3, but how wrong I've been. But it's not just that. The racing has been brilliant on the circuit as well, but combine that with the thing we like, different ways of doing the same thing. it has just been enthralling. I'd say you'd have to say it's an absolute masterclass today from Team BMW Bank, because they weren't at the sharp end early on, but by running the tactics they did, they've somehow come away with a victory by 22 seconds. That is massive. So, yeah, really, really enthralling.
Not quite the battles in the minor classes that we've sometimes been used to seeing. TCR, of course, was the usual fright fest in some respects, with at one stage I think the top 6 cars, possibly even the top 7, within a couple of 3 seconds. But again, it's going to be the Sim RC cars who comes through in Porsche, and we've got the core car, that distinctive white and tangerine colour, heading on to the Dottinger in a corner or two's time. We've not seen so much of the supporting cast, Bruce, but with the action at the front of the field, I really can't fault our directors for making sure that we saw what was going on there.
No, certainly not a crime. While we know there's brilliant racing in the other classes, I would say some of the racing today in the top class was the best it's been. Maybe not 4 or 5 cars together, but 2 cars together with another couple not so far up the track ahead of them. And one little mistake, you could see the whole thing concertinaing. And we saw cars getting very much on the ragged edge. We saw mistakes from Alexia Loma and Marcel Marcevic that changed the position, but you've got to forgive them. They ran for the full 3 hours, so no wonder they were getting a bit tired by the end.
Well, here is the TCR leader, about to become the TCR winner. Core Sim Racing coming to the line and coming through now to win, Kimmo Sinonen. Patrick Kabinji did the middle parts of the race. They take the victory there. And that's not the first time we've mentioned their name in the new SP10 GT4 category. Porsches and BMWs now. Marty Sippola has anchored the... now we've now changed that to... No, that is correct. The Claudius V car coming through. Sorry, my apologies. So, coming through to take that one. That was Claudius V for Sim RC Cup 2, taking the Porsche category, and we're waiting to see the new GT4 category, and that is Marty Sippola for Core Sim Racing. So another great run for Sim RC Cup 2, and taking the Porsche class in some style, Claudius Veed and Simon Grossman. These guys have still got a little bit of a lap to go before we can call them across the line in the 303, which is the leading car in the Porsche and BMW GT4 category. Marty Sippola for Core Sim Racing 2, which he's shared with Sindre Setsas, who do the middle part of the stint, and Carl Janssen, who is the qualifying expert in that team, who led away at the start of the field as well. Interestingly, I've just confused myself there, because I had that car down as the 304, but that's the first time I've noticed that, because that's the first time I've looked at my team sheet from earlier on.
There's so much to consider, John, but I was just sort of focusing on that victory. We talked about Kai Kashuba bringing it home, but Bruno Spengler, what a week he's had. You commentated on his championship victory in the IMSA series, and he's just pinged in a second win here.
He's making a habit of talking to us. We'll just see this car over the line. I'm sure Bruno won't mind about that, as he's standing by for the interview, just waiting for the Porsche to come to the end of this race and be the last of the racing cars home. Just under the Bilstein Bridge now, Bruno Spengler joining us in the global broadcast said, we're making a habit of this, Bruno. People are talking about us. I'm talking to you more than most people in the world at the moment.
Hey man, how are you? I'm always happy to talk to you.
Well, you're always happy to talk to me. That's a very nice thing to say. I'm always very happy to you as the Core Sim Racing number 303 does finish the race and win the new SP10 class with the BMWs in there as well. I'm always happy to talk to you. It means that you've won again. Are you making a habit of this? Do you get real trophies for this, or are you going to have a virtual cloud-based trophy cabinet built?
I think at the moment it's virtual trophies, but whether they're virtual or real, they always feel real, and I'm super happy that we won it today. After winning the title in IMSA, to win here with my two teammates on a completely different format, on a completely different track. It's our second victory here, so it's something very special. And I really enjoy having Kai and Niels as teammates because they're amazing. I can learn so much from them, and I think we are a really good team together. And we pull each other forward, and also to have the support from BS Competition is something huge for us. And yeah, at the end we won the race today, and we are really, really happy. It's a great Saturday.
In the context of what we've seen in the previous 5 races, 22 seconds is actually a relatively comfortable victory. You weren't necessarily door handle to door handle with anybody on the last few laps. You did a really interesting strategy. You started the race having qualified with the 7 laps. Niels did 7 as well. Then Kai split the last 8 laps. Again, the heat out there affecting the tyre performance. So it wasn't the longest race we've seen. It was only a 22-lap race, and you guys called that strategy perfectly.
Yeah, I think strategy was key today because it was super important to stay out of traffic. The tires were dropping quite a lot with the new tire model. The GT3 tires, they are dropping quite a lot with higher track temps. So we had to try and stay consistent. And as you said, to do the 7 laps at the beginning, we thought about stopping early to stay out of traffic, but which a lot of other cars did. But at the end, we decided to keep going and then do 7-7, and as you said, split Kai at the end, which worked super well. Niels stayed pretty much out of traffic. Kai also had a really nice run, so it was, yeah, the strategy was definitely super important today, and to stay out of trouble, and again, be careful at the start in the first couple of corners, because you can lose everything there. So yeah, thanks to these two guys, they were super fast again, super consistent, and was a great result.
And who makes that call, Bruno? Because you were only going to be a lap short on fuel, but you made sure that Kai got the best of you have to put a new set of tyres on if you put fuel in the car. So there wasn't really much point in coming to 1 lap before the end. So you gave him a 4-lap stint at the end to get the best out of those new tyres. Who makes that call?
So at the beginning, as I was driving, Kai and Niels were looking at the numbers and looking at everything, and I think they decided together to do the call of the strategy, and then then after, let's say, a couple of laps of my stint, I think we knew what we were going to do, and then whether the last 2 stints of Kai were going to be 5 laps plus 3, or it was going to be 4 and 4. It was going to be this was a little bit adaptive to the situation, but it was clear that we were quite early clear that we were going to do 7 and 7, and then how Kai's stint was going to be done, this was a little bit of a later decision. But yeah, I think Niels and Kai were really talking together and thinking together while I was driving in the first stint.
Well, Nels has joined us now. Bruno, thank you very much indeed. Another victory. Well done, mate. Speak to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you, man. Thank you, and always happy talking to you.
Nils, welcome to the broadcast booth. Another victory. You had that difficult middle stint to do. Heard Bruno talking about the tyres there. 7 laps. That was the key to it today. You two doing the first 14 laps between you.
Yeah, it was interesting today because most of the other teams were on a different strategy, which was basically the better strategy in terms of traffic. But we wanted to do something else because we were a bit down on top speed, especially compared to the Mercedes, so it would have been very hard to pass them. So we needed to do something else in strategy. That's why Bruno and me both took very long stints, basically the other way around what the other guys did.
And in clean air, actually, you guys had a pretty good car. You also, I mean, your stint, I noticed you had a lot of traffic in your stint. And at one stage, you had to go past the TCR battle, which was, I think, six cars all having a great scrap. And it was really important that you got through that traffic really quickly and didn't lose any time.
Yeah, that's one of the key things. I mean, the times here are very close, and you don't just drive 5 seconds faster than another guy here, but you can easily lose 5 seconds in traffic. So traffic is a very important thing here, and that's what you need to manage as well to win here.
Well done, Nils. Have a great weekend. Hopefully speak to you soon. Thanks also to Bruno Spengler, winners at the front of the field. Let's take some of the class winners now as well, and the new GT4 category as it is now. Still a Porsche victory. The core team are with us: Carl Janssen, Matti Sipilä and Sindre Setsas. Start with Carl, who qualified and started the race. Bit of new competition for you with the BMW M4s this week, but I think the first 4 positions were still Porsches. Carl, how was that start of the race for you?
The start of the race was fine. Got a good launch, and then was able to take the racing line through turn 1. The speed of the car today was very good, so we were able to pull away and get a gap quite immediately. And then from there on, yeah, it was just a run to the line.
Sindre, you did the middle stint there in the core machine, and often that's where things can be won and lost. It's a really important time. You've got the leaders coming through, possibly as well. Very hot temperatures here. Did that affect how you were driving the car in terms of how the tyres were performing?
Yeah, there's been an update to this car, so the tyres now massively overheat instead of actually being on temperature they should be. So yeah, it's not ideal running around with almost 140-degree tyre temp. That's Celsius as well. So yeah, it's just blistering hot tyres out there. Yeah, it felt quite okay still, though. We seem to have a huge pace advantage on the rest of the field, so that was good. Also, the middle stint was chaotic as ever. Leaders coming through, making the moves I expect them to do, dive bombing everywhere, but I'm used to that from real life around here, so it's nothing different really.
And Matti, you finished it off. You had the glory stint, had to keep the concentration going as well. In the end, finishing a little bit further ahead than we've seen recently of the Zorg Rennsport guys. Did you have an incident-free run to the end? Just keeping your concentration going, clearly.
Yeah, there was no problems on my stint. There was quite little traffic as well, actually. So it was quite clear run to the end, and the few faster cars that came through, I gave them quite a lot of space and gave them away quite early, so I didn't want to risk anything there. So it was quite clear and easy in that way.
And Carl, if I can just finish with you, update to your car recently, as we heard from Matti. The latest update from iRacing put the BMW M4 GT4 in there. Right, come on, tell me the truth. I bet you tested the BMW M4, didn't you? You all tested that before you decided to stay with the 718.
Yeah, for sure. I think every team tested it. For us, though, it wasn't as fast as the Porsche. Probably could get close, but with the right setup. But yeah, since we already had a lot of setup work in this car, we decided to stay with it.
Well, it's another great result for you. Well done, you three, and we'll see you at the next one. Another good win for Corp. Well done, Carl, Matti, and Sindre. Well done, mates. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
So Bruce Jones, once again, some familiar names there that we were talking to, and I had to ask, of course, the question about that new BMW. Added some variety though into what is now a proper GT4 class and not just another Porsche Cup class.
Well, we're all for variety, of course. I was trying to watch when it was in close traffic with the leading Caymans to see where it might benefit, be better than them, and where it was losing out. But unfortunately, the story was told by the fact that the best place of those BMWs, mainly with sort of trying to remember who was driving it at the time, but it just couldn't stay with them. And so it was very, very hard to make that comparison. But I'm sure it will get closer. And it just made me laugh when you asked the question about, well, did you test the BMW? But of course we did. They're racing people, aren't they? So, I think it's great. And I'd love.
Well, isn't there a big advantage as well, Bruce, in the virtual world? It's not like they had to go out and buy one and put a load of other kit on the truck and, spend time on it. They acquire it through their credits on iRacing and then they can do back-to-back testing. That is an advantage of the real world.
No, exactly so. It just makes me laugh. The similarities between real world racing and sim racing, they're even greater than we realised.
Yeah, they certainly are. Another fabulous race. Bruce, thank you very much indeed for joining us for round 6 of DNLS. DNLS 6 was the H&R 3-hour race. Congratulations to all of our winners. Tactics once again playing out at the front of the field, and tactical perfection by Team BMW Bank with Bruno Spengler, Niels Koch and Kai Kashuba for that 107 Team BMW Bank team, taking the victory by 22 seconds. You can almost say you could count on them. Sorry, couldn't resist it. We'll be back for round 7, of course, here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels and in sound and vision. It's the DNLS, the Digital Nürburgring Langstrecke Series, presented by VCO. Some real world racing for you later on tonight, 7 o'clock UK on RS1, RS3 and in sound and vision, www.radio-show.co.uk. Drop in for Nick Damon, Johnny Palmer and me as we talk about the 24 hours of Portimao. But for Bruce Jones, myself, engineer and producer in London, Tim Gray, and also the whole team, Michael and the rest of the team. Thanks to Connery as well for cutting the pictures. I'm John Hinoff. Thanks very much. Enjoy your racing weekend. It's the best of both worlds today on the Radio Show Limited network of channels. Bye-bye.